We're talking that.
Yeah.
Right, good evening. It is 7 o'clock. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion for the agenda.
Motion by
sorry.
Councilmember Pershman
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, community comment. At this time, presenters are welcome to address the City Council for matters related or matters relevant to the City of Carver's authority for up to 5 minutes on matters not listed on tonight's agenda. Specific requests for information may not immediately be available, in which case follow-up will occur with the presenter sometime after the meeting. The City Council should not be expected immediately to act on requests. However, they will follow up accordingly and may schedule items for future consideration. Looks like you're ready.
I am. Is there anyone else?
Why don't you come on up?
Just jump to the front of the line, but Ellen's going to give you a little handout as to what I'm speaking about today.
All right. Go ahead and introduce yourself with your name and address, please.
Jennifer, and I live in Carver County, and the subject is voting. And since we all vote, it is pertinent to all the cities and counties cities and townships in the county of Carver County. I have a goal, and I have not been successful at that goal. And that goal is to have what I perceive to be nonpartisan and common sense to our voting on our absentee ballot boards, and that is to have every process from A to Z, processing over half of our votes, to have major parties, both all eyes on the ballot processing. So what does that mean? That means I want Republicans and Democrats doing every process from A to Z and processing over half of our votes. In 2020, we literally had next to zero, fought really hard. In 2022, had a couple. We're pushing even further. And what I have found is that leaders in the area who are willing to call their, who is your commissioner for this area? Is that Fahey or is it Mr. Fahey?
Warren Fahey.
So my request for a call to action is to call Mr. Fahey and say, we would really like the county of Carver County to pass a resolution that says we are going to use major party balance from A to Z for all processes. Now, I actually printed this out, and we're just going to go over this little printout. I found this on the League of Women Voters website, of which I was not a member when I found this. And if we go to page 2, it says election judges at the bottom where I have it highlighted. Election judges are required to identify a party affiliation because 2 election judges of the same party cannot work together. We do not do that in Carver County. Next page. Then the ballots are removed from the ballot secrecy envelopes. All steps of the counting process are done in pairs with 2 election judges of differing parties. As the ballots are removed, the pairs check to make sure they do not have unusual streaks, larger improper marks or tears to ensure that they will go through the counting machine. We do not do that in Carver County. Don't let them tell you that we do, because we don't. Safeguards. If a voter marked their ballot improperly, a team of election judges of differing parties will go through and determine the intent of the voter. We have not done that, even though that is law for 2022. We had 2 employees after 8 o'clock running all 13,000 ballots through, and my goal is to have major party balance, recreating those rejected ballots, and I need your help to do that. Now, if you don't think voting and counting over half of our ballots that are cast is important, and to have all eyes on the ballot and transparency, then I guess you won't do a darn thing. But if you do find that important, I am hoping that you call your commissioner, and actually, in a perfect world, all 5 of them, and say, gentlemen, because I do love them all, but I'm very disappointed that they haven't done this already. Gentlemen, you need to pass a resolution that says, to the best of our ability, we are going to process A to Z of major party balance. And that's my request. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you all, because as I'm learning and meeting all the different leaders in Carver County, we've got some really awesome ones, and I know the extra time and energy, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Can I ask the city attorney a question about this topic? So is this I mean, this is the first time that I've seen this packet, right? You just handed it out. So is this something that is the League of Women Voters' intent, or is this something that is in a law, or?
I don't have the document.
Okay.
Heard the presentation, and I'm not sure that I'll.
Chrissy, let's
Right.
keep to our standard procedure
That's-
where we follow up with this at a later
And
time. Vicky sent out
I'm
an email
just-
related to
I will
this.
follow up with you on that, because when I presented this at the commissioners' meeting.
Okay,
all
Jennifer,
went loose,
Jennifer,
and
you
they
still have a little
changed.
time if you want, but
Oh, okay.
you need to come up to the microphone. You have about a minute left if you,
Real quickly, when I brought this up to the commissioners' meeting and handed this out, all heck went loose and everything went crazy at the county. So the Women League of Voters actually changed their website to "We trust our employees, our employees are wonderful, and they can count the ballots."
Okay.
like I said at the beginning,
That's fine, thank you.
all right. Is there anybody else here for community comments? Oh, come on up. Good evening, Eric.
Evening, I'm Eric Evenson. I live at 223 Carver Creek Place. First, I just wanted to start out with a couple of thank yous, and I had a question. I think I'll start with my question first. What I'm really here tonight is to talk about the Creekside Park development. And I'm wondering if I should wait until that item comes up for discussion, or if you'd like me to share my thoughts with you at this point. I know there's a few
Why
other
don't you
people
go
here.
ahead right now since
Okay.
we're here?
All right, sure. And I know there's a few other people here who are interested in the issue. So I just want to first start off by thanking Brent and the city for getting on top of the weeds on our street. The person that's lived there, we've lived with almost close to 25 years of an abandoned house sitting there. And I was delighted to see it coming down, so I'm equally as happy to see the city getting out and taking care of the weed issues, because I have a feeling if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So thank you for that. And I also want to thank you for your responding to concerns on the parkway, on Jonathan Parkway coming in. I actually like the native plantings up there. I know that's not shared by everybody in the city, and everybody's got their own aesthetic, but I think it's giving the city a very positive and very unique identity that I hope is continued throughout the other facilities in the city. And that kind of brings me to the issue on Creekside Park, and I do appreciate you getting back to me on that. Question I had, I guess to start with, is you did send me a copy of a meeting coming up on the 13th, and I'm wondering, has this gone out? Has this been published yet to anybody?
We mailed it on Friday.
Okay, because I've not received anything yet, and there's nothing on your website about it either, so it's something to be good to get in there. I came in here and talked about this thing, oh man, well over a year ago when you were first applying to the Department of Natural Resources for it, and I had some comments relative to the landscaping. I had other questions relating to the operations and maintenance of this thing that I can't tell if they were ever addressed, because there's really nothing on the website to really deal with it. But I just to kind of rehash a few of the things that I brought up at the time is concerns about the planting, whether or not it was just going to be turf grass and everything else, or if you were actually going to try to get some natives combined in there. I also had questions about the operations and maintenance of the facility, and whether or not what the plans were for that, what the long-term costs were for that, and so forth. Those questions still exist. I think underlying all of those, though, is what sort of a process was used to garner information on this thing. I was assured back when I spoke over a year ago that there would be an opportunity to have some robust discussion onto the design and the operations of that. It looks like you do have the meeting coming up on the 13th, but honestly, these meetings, and I'm very familiar with these things, tend to be show and tell type meetings. They aren't the set of things where you can really get into a lot of the important details that need to be discussed on these things, including, you're talking about $1 million here. That's not chump change in my world. How much community involvement did you have in even selecting this as a priority for you? When I talked to you folks back in a year ago or a year or so ago, I raised a concern that so often these projects go through without a lot of input up front, and once the ball starts rolling on them, there's really no good opportunity for anybody in the public to come and to say anything about it. Because it gets very difficult for you as city council people and even for staff to say, well, wait a minute, let's put the brakes on this thing and take a look and ask, is this the best use of $1 million for the city? Or are we better off using it for something like paving roads or paving trails or actually improving some of the facilities we already have in place? Now it doesn't look like there's going to be much of an opportunity to have those bigger pictures. Does it make sense to have access going directly on what will become an extremely busy highway in a few years in Carver County? Because we're expecting, I'm sure I have to tell you what the plans are. It's a lot of development going up on the hill on County Road 11. All that development's coming down. And I'm scared seriously that somebody is going to be seriously injured unless something is done about the traffic, if something is done about the speeds of the traffic coming down there. And if we were talking about putting up a park with direct access to Highway 11, where you could barely see, where it's got very poor sightlines as it is right now, are we asking for trouble? My concern.
Eric, I'm going to ask you to
Okay.
wrap it up. You're coming close to
All right.
your
Well,
time.
I don't
Thank
know
you.
if I'll have any opportunities to talk about this. Will I have another opportunity at some point in time to have this discussion with the council?
Well, we have the community meeting, and then I'm regretting the order because I think that a lot of the questions that you posed are going to be in Ms. Smith's presentation on the park a little bit later on tonight in the meeting.
All right.
So
So is it possible I could ask questions for clarification at that time, or is this going to be closed to the public at that time?
I don't believe we're having it. The meeting is always open to the public. I think the best format is we can have you ask your questions, and then we'll make sure that staff is able to answer them. But I feel like we got
Okay. I'll wait
couple
for her to-
questions, plantings, operations, community involvement, which
Mayor, I can answer a couple of these just straight away. I think it'll be
Sure.
maybe.
We just went through with the prior person here talking about,
well, but
Our
this
mode
is
of
something that's
operation.
on the.
it's not under the agenda, under this number of the agenda, not because I don't want to hear what you have
No,
to say.
I'll do
I'm
whatever
gonna,
you want.
I'm gonna run the meeting though, respectfully.
Oh, so well then respectfully, run it the same for all things on the agenda.
So, Mr. Evenson, the city doesn't prepare operations and maintenance plans for any of its parks, so it's just not something that we're gonna have available to you. We do, regular like maintenance plans as far as like mowing and stuff, but like a full kind of breath operation as a maintenance plan isn't something that we're gonna have the wherewithal to prepare. So if I'm missing the beat on if there's some specific information that you're looking for, but it's just not something that we do as a standard practice. As far as like the availability on prairie and turf grass, like that'd be exactly the type of comments that we would be looking for at this planning meeting on the mix of where turf should be and where prairie grass should be. As far as like, should the park go in or not, like I would offer it if there was kind of this expectation that could be debated at this time, like there's nothing to suggest through policy or practice that like whether or not the park should go in is up for debate at this point. It's considering design standards and what the city council and what the community want the park to look like, but whether or not it should go in and how it fits within priority, that was resolved with past discussions. So if there is any miscommunication on that, my apologies. If there are any other, pardon? Go ahead.
Yeah, so your question about, like, should the $1 million be used for other projects in town? We're using grant dollars from the DNR, we got $350,000. And then the remainder is coming from the city's park dedication fund, which has, Dave can speak to it, but there are really strict specifications what we can use that money for, and it's only new parks. So we wouldn't be able to take that money and use it for paving. That's not an option with the funding source we're using for the city contribution to this park.
Well, I appreciate it. And Brent, you did answer some of the questions, but it leaves, and actually it kind of reinforces one of my concerns about this whole thing. And then there are other issues relative to the use of the park. These are facilities at this point. The use of the facilities that, I'm worried that as a Carver County taxpayer, or as a City of Carver taxpayer, that we're creating facilities that are not going to be used, or that are available to be used by City of Victoria, by Laketown Township, and so forth, and that's going to add to the cost. And honestly, I don't want to pay for services for Laketown Township or the City of Victoria. So those are the sort of discussions I think are important, bigger picture discussions that relate to the operations thing. But I will respect the mayor and Christie, and if you have some discussions, if you're going to discuss this later on, I'll hold off on my.
Yep, and I'd be happy, I'll be at the open house. We can pick this up too, and I can make sure that your position is adequately articulated to the council if you don't get another opportunity.
All right, thank you.
Right. Anybody else for something that is not on the agenda for tonight? All right. Moving along, we don't have any presentations and reports, but we do have a public hearing. Tonight's public hearing will be on the Cannabis Moratorium Amendment. Let's see. I will make a motion to open the public hearing before we hear from Dave.
I'll second.
We have a second. Motion by Mayor Johnson, a second by Councilmember Welch. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The legislature recently, a couple months ago, made some changes to the 2023 Cannabis Act. There is a memo, obviously, in your packet that articulates and summarizes some of this. Included in those recent changes were some amendments that really, I think, poorly mesh or don't mesh at all with the city and every city's authority to adopt the cannabis business moratorium, which Carver, like many cities, did last year. Included in that amendment were some changes to the definition of cannabis business. It removed some medical cannabis businesses from that definition. And then it also created a process where businesses can get license pre-approval. They've already started a process now where they're applying for this pre-approval lottery. And then if they get pre-approved to operate, they can begin certain cultivation activities, even though they aren't licensed under the new state law yet. And so the reason this ties into the moratorium and the confusion on a lot of this is because the Cannabis Act gave cities the authority to establish and adopt a moratorium on businesses licensed under the Act. There are no businesses licensed under the Act yet. That will not happen for many, many more months because the Office of Cannabis Management is taking its time because this stuff takes a lot of time and there aren't even rules yet around this stuff. So the concern is we just want to make sure that a business doesn't get license pre-approval and starts to be able to do early business activities because we want to get zoning regulations in place, which we're planning on working through with staff this fall. This is really just belt and suspenders, I would call it, to clarify for any businesses that if you want to operate in Carver, you can't yet because we don't know where you're going to be allowed from a zoning standpoint. And this license pre-approval, I don't want people to use it as a loophole to begin operating, because if they start operating legally and we don't have the ability to say no under the moratorium, we would not be able to create zoning regulations that would say, well, maybe that's not the best place for cultivation, especially with cultivation because it can be really smelly and bothersome to neighbors. These cultivating operations are not really favorably viewed by folks that they're close to. So it's again, belt and suspenders, but I'm recommending the city simply make an amendment to its moratorium to clarify that for prospective businesses. You've already opened the public hearing, so you can hear from anyone that has comments, should there be any. And then the recommendation is to approve the amendment to the ordinance and adopt the resolution, which would allow summary publication. And I know it's confusing. It's hard to explain as well, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right. Now is the time for public comments. So if there are any public comments, now's the time to come up. After all public comments are received, if there are any, the public hearing will be closed. No further comments on this issue will be received at this meeting. Is there anyone providing public comments on this issue? Going once, going twice? All right, motion to close the public hearing, please.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Got a motion by Councilmember Mock
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember Pershman. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, any additional comments or questions from council?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So I know this has been a lot of work, right? The state really didn't do a good job of sending these out ahead of time. So even if we wanted to support a early cultivator, we still don't even have the rules from the state that would even allow us to do that, even if we wanted to, correct?
Right, and I would argue even if a business tried to do this stuff early right now, we would use our moratorium to say, you can't do that. I don't want a business to make an argument that is counter to that and to lose on that argument. I mean, most cities are saying, no, you can't operate it because we don't have our rules in place. We don't have our zoning regulations in place. And I think the likelihood of losing that argument is pretty slim for the city. But again, this is just to, I would say, bolster our ability to say that, no, we meant this. And when they changed this to allow pre-approval and early cultivation, we still meant it to cover that too. And
Okay.
I'm not aware of any businesses making that argument, nor do I expect them necessarily to, but I'd rather be in a position to say no, and we've even made this better since we adopted it last year, to clarify that for you. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and then just maybe another follow-up. I guess I wasn't quite on the council yet when we approved this last year, but I had been following it. As I understand it, again, starting January 1st though, right, the state would prohibit us from extending the moratorium past that, so we still have to have the rules in place. We just are planning to have that all done on the 1st when it starts legally, right?
Yes, the statute only allows the moratorium to last through the end of this year. So the goal is to have zoning regulations and registration provisions in our ordinance before the end of the year. The model ordinance just was published, I think, within the last couple of weeks. So cities are going to start, I mean, they have to bring them through planning commission, and there's some policy discussions that have to happen, at local levels. So yes, it'll be very soon before this.
And so it definitely is temporary, right? For sure, right?
It's about as temporary as it gets.
Okay, great, thank you, that's all I had.
Less than 4 months.
4 months,
5
great.
months at this
Thank
point.
you.
Yes.
Christie?
So first a comment, the OCM has made this incredibly hard to go through and really difficult, and I wish I would have had a lot of this stuff in place when we first started seeing it. That's just my comment on this issue. So tell me, does this have any bearing or affect the business that we have in town right now?
It shouldn't. I mean, the only thing we're dealing with here is early cultivation under license pre-approvals. Those businesses haven't even had the lottery for pre-approvals yet. So if they were going to start doing activities that they might want to do later, they're months away from having the ability to do that. So all this is doing is keeping our status quo in place as a community with our zoning regulations to say you can't start selling cannabis under a cannabis business license unless and until we create zoning rules for that. And if we don't have them by the time those licenses start getting issued, in 2025, that's on us. We're going to have them by that time. But this particular decision has zero bearing on that business, from my perspective, unless they're unlawfully selling things, I guess, that.
Okay.
But I don't have any reason to believe they're doing that.
Okay, so there'll be status quo for the business that we have in town.
Yeah, this won't change any
Okay.
existing lawfully run businesses in the whole state. This wouldn't change anything.
Okay, and so with this pre-approval lottery, is it going to be fully approved 2025 is when, I'm not understanding why the state would do a pre-approval. I'm just super confused as to why,
I think,
how that,
Yep.
comes into play?
I think the point, and it's hard to put myself in the mind of the legislature, but I think the point is they want businesses to start cultivating so that when we turn the switch to go,
They can sell.
there's gonna be supply.
Okay.
That's my guess, because if otherwise it's gonna take months, the stuff you can't grow in 2 days. I think it takes quite a bit of time to ramp up those
January in
businesses.
Minnesota.
Cultivate, all of that, yes.
Okay.
And so my guess is that they're just trying to get out ahead of that a little bit, so.
Okay.
And there will be places for some of these businesses to operate. I mean, there are presumably cities that either have zoning in place already and they're gonna be able to go there, or don't care to regulate these things and haven't even thought through this stuff. I mean, there's a very wide spectrum of viewpoints and things, but from a planning standpoint, it's important to have this in place just for a few more months so that we can, as a staff, bring you some, sound, I think, zoning recommendations, and the planning commission can make those recommendations and you guys can make a decision on that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I don't really have any additional questions. I wanted to know how it would impact our existing business, but to me, this is procedural as kind of directed by OCM. So I don't see our actions as anything but that amendment.
Right. I don't have any additional questions either, so we need a couple of motions, please.
I move to adopt ordinance number 04-2024, an interim ordinance amending ordinance number 06-2023 regarding cannabis-related businesses within the city of Carver.
Motion by Councilmember Welch,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Pershman. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I'll take it again. I move to adopt resolution number 129-24, a resolution authorizing summary publication of ordinance 04-2024.
Motion by Councilmember Welch,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Pershman. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
Moving on, the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Pershman,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Moving
Fun
right
stuff.
along. Item number 8.1 under business items, the United Properties Industrial Project Concept. Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are reviewing a concept plan that was submitted by United Properties. So we talk about United Properties pretty often related to property at the corner of Jonathan Carver Parkway and Highway 212. So that is the commercial arm of United Properties. This is still United Properties, but a different branch of their business. So similar, we talk about United Properties a lot, but it's a different project, different branch of their development company. So keep that in mind, that we're not talking about the corner of JCP and 212 tonight. So we're really early in the process. We are at our first stage. So what we're looking for tonight is big feedback, big picture, knowing that there are a lot of unknowns about the project that we will work through as we continue to learn more, as we continue to review other applications. So we are at step one, ground zero, talking about the United Properties industrial piece. So again, we're looking for feedback, big picture comments, ask questions that you might have after reviewing the information. Some of our answers might be that we don't know. We're not being facetious or coy. We don't know a lot about this project yet, just because engineering typically has not started. We're not looking for any action tonight by the City Council, just discussion and feedback. The Planning Commission reviewed the same application at their July 18th meeting, and they were generally supportive of the idea. And the project is being proposed by United Properties and Measure Group. Josh is here with Measure Group. I'll have him come up towards the end of my presentation, introduce himself, give a little bit of an overview about the project, and then he'll join us for the discussion as well. And Connor, with United Properties, we think might be having a baby today. So,
Yes.
well, okay, Connor's wife is having a baby today.
Connor's facing the hallways.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to likely having someone from United Properties at an upcoming meeting too. So the project that we are looking at, the property, as we've referred to it for many years as JCP Holdings. The address is 12280 Jonathan Carver Parkway. It is directly adjacent to Lakeview, so directly west of Lakeview Industries, near Fleet Farm. So we are north of Highway 212, where Fleet Farm and Lakeview Industries is. And it's part of our growth area and our orderly annexation agreement. So you'll see on our comprehensive plan, the circle is on the property that we're talking about tonight, and it's that dark purple, which calls for a commercial/industrial mix, which generally what we know about this project so far meets that guidance. So thinking about our comp plan, checks that box. Zoning, we'll get to know more about the project as we continue through the process, but in general, we believe that it will also meet our zoning code. So details, again, comprehensive plan calls for industrial commercial. It's currently in the township, so we cannot rezone the property. We cannot make formal decisions about the property until annexation. Again, it's in our orderly annexation agreement area, so that will be a process that will need to be completed should the project continue to move forward. Utilities are available via Levi Griffin Road, so we've been thinking about this project, thinking about this growth area, and the utilities we've installed in Levi Griffin are adequate. Also in Commerce Drive, so this north-south street that was constructed with Lakeview also has utilities available for this project. And access will be both from Levi Griffin and Commerce Drive. Site plan details project specific. It's calling for 2 industrial buildings, both at 189,000 square feet, parking for both users and visitors for the site. Some information about the interior of the spaces. They're calling for high ceilings, space that can be demised for multiple employers, flexible site layout and parking, and markets that they'd be targeting are production lab, research and development, warehousing, and distribution. So the concept plan, the thing that we all anxiously await, is on the screen now, showing those 2 buildings at about 189,000 square feet. You'll notice there's access from Levi Griffin, so it's anticipated that the median on Levi Griffin will be extended, so that will just be a right into the site only, primarily for employees of the site, so there won't be heavy traffic coming off Levi Griffin. It will be directed towards commerce or the shared access with Lakeview Industries. You also see throughout the plan there's a dense landscape, especially along JCP, so thinking about landscaping throughout the entire project. And then we've been working with Carver County and the development group talking about a trail that would run north-south on the farthest west side of this property to eventually get us up to Victoria and our neighbors to the north and connect into our greater trail system on the south side of Levi Griffin as well as the south side of Highway 212. You saw the facade in the earlier presentation as the design guidelines for the industrial district. So just some general ideas of what the building might look like along with the industrial design guidelines that are on the screen now. So you'll see that they match pretty closely. So thinking about exteriors of face brick, precast concrete, et cetera, and some examples that were provided as part of the project. There was a narrative that was provided in the packet, which I think was really helpful information to get a feel of the users they're looking for. And as part of review of this project, once we get through a couple of the processes, an EAW or an environmental assessment worksheet will be required based on the size of the project. So Minnesota state statute has some triggers that if a project is over X numbers square feet, you have to do an EAW no matter what. This is one of those projects. So the EAW form was included in the city council packet so you could get a feel of the questions that are asked during an EAW. So it's things like traffic, noise, sound, light, etc. So it looks at most facets of a project to be able to determine if there is adverse impact of the development. So through this review process, we'll go through annexation, we'll go through preliminary plat, final plat, but the EAW will give us that big piece of information that not only council but also residents might be looking for. How will this impact? We were joking, like, we always hear about a long-eared bat. If the bat is on this property, we will know. We'll talk about the impacts for it. So next steps would be annexation, EAW, rezoning, preliminary plat, final plat. So there's a lot to work through. Again, we're just at step 1, so there's a lot of big questions. Josh, will you come up at this point and introduce yourself?
Mayor, members of the council, my name is Josh McKinney with Measure Group. Thanks so much for having me here. Aaron's done a phenomenal job of kind of walking through the project. But I'm happy to answer any questions. But maybe before I do that, just kind of questions that we typically would get. We don't have a user identified for the project yet. So we're really trying, to work through this initial concept phase with the city, determine if there's any feedback, positive or negative, that we could basically use to tailor our approach when we're going to market the property. As Aaron mentioned, these type of properties or these buildings are really kind of laid out. You can kind of see on the plan there's a 50-foot grid, more or less. And so those would be set up where those are structural bays, but also there'd be, they have the ability to demise down. And so be supportive of multiple tenants. And then, there's typically, an office space, which we're envisioning kind of up on Jonathan Carver Parkway, just from a visibility standpoint. There's, the R&D and research portion of the property, and then there's some distribution and warehousing in order to kind of either assemble a project or a piece of a widget per se, and then ship it out. At this point, I think, one of the nice things we have on this project we don't often is that there's another, light industrial building right next to us. And so you can take a lot of the cues for what this building would want to be by simply looking at Lakeview Industries. It's not something that's heavy industry. It's not a major polluter. It's not anything that's, going to be, wildly outside of what Lakeview does. So with that, I guess I'd stand for questions and look forward to your feedback.
Super, thank you. Questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
When I'm looking at the turn in coming off Levi Griffin, and
Yeah.
this is a question for maybe both, probably more Aaron. We have a turn lane that's not far down to go onto Commerce Drive. I don't see that there's a turn lane right here in the plan. I know if it's too early, great, or if it's not going to be in there, then I worry about backup as the city grows, that we have an inlet there, rather than using the already in place right-hand turn lane to use Commerce Drive to come into the area.
Aaron, do you have any feedback about it?
Yeah, so when the EAW takes place, that'll involve a traffic review as well. So we don't have trip generation numbers for the building right now, but we did some preliminary looking at that right in, and off the cuff, we're not seeing a big issue with that. I
Is
believe
that
that's
a
gonna
today's
be,
population or future population?
so that right in would just service that development.
No, but what are the projections you're looking at? Is that future populations or just today's population?
Future 20-year traffic forecasting, so. And Josh might be able to talk to that, but I believe that is intended to be just a write-in for employees. It wouldn't be a truck access at that location, so the truck access would be coming off of Commerce Drive is how I understand it, so.
So will we think about putting a turn lane in there also, so that we don't back traffic up as they make the right hand off of 11? Because that would be the lane that they would technically supposed to go straight into.
We'll learn more with the EAW
Okay.
to see how many trips will be generated into the site, and if it warrants a turn lane, we can explore that option.
Okay. My only other comment is looking at the trail, the future trail, does it seem very close to the road with where the parking lot comes out? It's hard to tell, obviously, because, the one below it, but it's a dotted line right now. It just with the speed on that road and the heavy traffic that we could expect, that it would be far enough off the road for safety reasons.
Sure, so the development team put this together. The trail was not included. I asked them to throw a line on there because I thought you'd be interested in knowing that we're thinking about it. So know that the west side of the project is likely to change with that trail. This was a last minute ad that we requested from the development team.
Okay, so it could possibly, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, east side of the project, west side of.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Jonathan Carver Parkway,
Yep.
yes. That's my fault. So,
That was, okay. I last minute asked for that line, so it's no one's fault.
Sure. I'm just, because the parking lot on the drive on the edges of the building that are on the 11 side, and then those trees, that's pretty close. And then if we're trying to push a trail in there too, I just want to make sure that we have enough buffer there.
yeah, I would also just, so one of the things that's weird with this type of development too is like scale is completely blown out. We're showing like 25 feet from the end of that parking lot to the property line. So there is a significant amount of space.
Okay.
It's just at this scale, it looks like it's like that close.
Sure.
So, but point noted, and certainly would work with staff to locate that trail appropriately.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna mix it up. Eric, sorry.
Okay, yeah, no, go ahead.
So it's hard to ask questions about build it and they will come.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they happy to see commercial development
Yep.
where we hope to see commercial development.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the initial questions I'm thinking about all go back to this EAW. So I know we're gonna have a whole bunch of future conversations. you know, with 289,000 square foot buildings, what's the hope? Single tenants, multiple tenants? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if we had to write it up, I mean, it'd be a single tenant per building, right? Because that's an easier management situation. And there's a whole bunch of efficiencies that you gained.
You
But-
must have the demand for this to do that.
Absolutely, yes. You know, the Minneapolis market's an incredible demand in terms of this type of space. The Southwest Metro's no exception. Connor and his team at United Properties are, you know, probably one of the foremost developers of industrial space in the metro, and so they have a lot of data in terms of what their tenants are looking for, and certainly have a roster of tenants looking for space as well. Now, how this will lease out, you know, there's so many factors in terms of what that looks like with, you know, just the timing of this project relative to the markets, relative to, you know, probably 100 other factors. But suffice to say, our ideal scenario is you've got a larger tenant that would take as much space as possible. But that these buildings are flexible enough to kind of respond to the market. And I think that overall, if I'm the city of Carver, that's a good thing, right? We have a building that's not going to be vacant. If that one user in 10 years moves out, you have this ability to kind of demise into a smaller piece, and you've got some functional space kind of built for some flexibility in the future. So,
And hopefully we have a whole bunch of people come to Carver that want to live here.
absolutely.
Get lunch here.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
Yep.
Reed?
Yeah, so I was at the planning commission meeting, and they were generally supportive. I guess I'll echo a few of their questions just for the rest of the council here. One of the concerns was that the intention is not just to be a warehouse, right? It's intended to be more of a mixed where you'd have, like you said, office, manufacturing, and then some warehousing, right?
That's certainly a tent, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And then just, you know, more specifically on some of the landscaping, like you said, along the Jonathan Carver, and I think Christy brought up too, just, you know, making sure that between those two buildings, right, where you're intending the majority of the truck traffic and the dock, right, just to make sure that there's adequate landscaping and buffering to present a beautiful aesthetic as you can for an industrial building driving by. But yeah, no, I think it's good news. Glad to hear the demand. And like I said, the planning commission was very supportive of the idea, and so, excellent.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a laundry list of questions that I've just been jotting
Please.
down. And Eric said it's hard to ask questions when it's build it and they will come, but I'm going to ask those questions.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Do you have any kind of arithmetic, an equation of how many perceived employees or how many jobs that this will create?
It's a great question. I don't have that data. I'm sure we can get that data to you.
Okay.
I don't have it.
Just not sure if like roughly 189,000 square feet times
Yeah, I mean,
49, you know, whatever.
so generally we try to park this, you know, we park it enough where you have it, you know, I think it's a few, 2 per 1,000.
Okay.
So it'd be, you know, that's several stalls, right? So now that's just from a flexibility standpoint when we're marketing it. Do we have the ability to park, you know, if they had a high employer user? I'd say generally, you know, the parking on a building like this is not like fully utilized. So I'd say, you know, just from anecdotal experience, no data.
Okay.
50% of the stalls, you know, so if you could say on a building like this, if you got, you know, 284 stalls, you might have half of them
Okay.
full on it, you know, depending on how it's shifted.
Okay. And I trust that you meet all the parking requirements.
Yes.
I'm looking at this from how many jobs are coming to the city.
Yeah, right. No, I get it. I'm just backing into it of
Yeah,
like
no,
how
no.
many people are driving there.
I get it.
That makes
It's tricky
sense.
math. I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For reference, Lakeview, I think their projected employee count was about 90,
Okay.
and they're at 193,000 square feet. So not the same, but just a
Okay.
reference
Yeah,
point for us.
absolutely. Okay, Eric asked one of my questions. Are you doing this in any other communities? I understand, you know, what you're talking about when you're saying you painted future users with really broad brushstrokes, but do you have an example of something like this that went in Blaine or somewhere else where
Oh.
you can say we've got user X, Y, and Z?
Okay, so, boy, Connor would be so much better at this, but I'll, but I'll do my best.
His ears be ringing right now.
Yes, yeah, exactly, right. Hopefully he's not thinking about this. So I worked with Connor on a project in Brooklyn Park on 169 and 610. So they had in that situation, they had actually a similar type of, you know, arrangement in terms of buildings. One of them was completely taken up by a company called Cretex, which is a medical device manufacturer. That's actually the building you see when you're, sorry about that, when you're on 169 driving. It's kind of on the west side. And then another one, I think was a mixed tenancy with Tesla and another user. I'm not sure who the other one, but different, to that point, it's kind of flexible where you have one that, let's just say, our building one's wildly successful. We've got this thing under contract with a user. Then there's some financial certainty that we could build building two, and we could basically figure out how to tenant that building out.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you said tenant the building, contracted. This will be a leased property into perpetuity?
United Properties will own it, and then yes, it will be leased by usually it'd be rented or leased by the tenants. Yep.
Okay. And then I think the next question is for you, Aaron. So as it's a leased property, and probably it's the same throughout our community, but how do we make sure that that's an appropriate user, given what it's on for?
So typically that comes through a building permit process where they have to go through a change of use with Nick, our building official, to make sure that users have like the correct SAC units. It's typically a trigger for us. So if it's a change of user, we get that information.
All right. I think that was it for my questions. Thank you so much for your grace and
Of course.
looking in your crystal ball and answering the build it and they'll come.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Yep.
it. Let's see here. I don't think you need anything from us on this one. Correct?
Nope, that was it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving right along. 8.2, the 2024 Building and Maintenance Project Award of Bid. Mr. Merrick.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joel, if you want to pop up, just welcoming Joel Dunning with Wold Architects and Engineers to the front dais. So early in '23, the city engaged Wold to assist with the schematic and design development for a fire station and public services building project. Part of it involves some maintenance with HVAC and re-roof based on our service records and overall age of that equipment. There was a recommendation for full replacement of both the roof and the HVAC units. The second part was an effort to provide a climate-controlled space for the turnout gear for firefighters. There's been some industry trends and best practices reports suggesting that turnout gear should be enclosed in a separated environment from the apparatus bay to prevent the spread of carcinogens onto their turnout gear. And so initially, the city had planned for a building addition on the south side of the fire station building, but due to costs, we pivoted to a remodel of the building. So we ended up having the city council approve plans and specs at your June 17th meeting for that building remodel on the fire station side, the HVAC unit replacement, and the re-roof. On Thursday, July 25th, the city did a bid opening for that, and with that, I will toss it over to Joel to talk about the bids and the project in general.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's a good day to be back. We never like to be here when the project's over budget, so it's nice to be here when it's very much under budget. We had a great bid day with 7 bids submitted. 6 of those were plus or minus 3.5% of $800,000. So a tightly packed bidder group reinforces that they're all looking at the drawings the same way. They're all seeing the same work scope. They're just having slightly different takeoffs or profit margins or whatever. There's always one outlier of, there's one bidder in this of the 7 who, maybe they have enough work and they just thought they'd throw a high number in or whatever, but they're an outlier up high. But the low bid was Key Contractors. It looks like it's Q, but they actually spell it Key, or pronounce it Key. $771,033 was their low base bid. We did include an alternate that we got pricing on. The base bid was to reuse the existing insulation. If you recall, we did some core tests to determine what exactly the insulation material was, and if it was wet actually found out that it was in, where the cores were taken, it was decent, could have been reused, so we bid out the project, reusing all of the insulation. But that's a cost savings, ends up, well, it's only a $7,000 cost savings. The alternate was to take all the existing insulation off and replace it. Instead of just warranting the membrane, you get a full roof system warranty if you replace the insulation. And even though we did do some core tests and didn't find the insulation wet in those areas, there's always a chance that elsewhere on the roof there were some leaks and water has soaked the insulation and would necessitate replacing it anyway. So our recommendation for long-term warranty is to accept that alternate for $7,000 and then have a fully warranted full roof system for, I believe it's a 20-year warranty that we specified. Happy to answer any questions about it.
All right. Eric, do you want to go first?
Oh, well, obviously, I think $7,000 for a 20-year warranty is a good deal.
Yeah.
You know, you have already stated what I was thinking about this, that we had so many bidders and that they're close, I think is a really good indicator that we actually put everything out there, you put everything out there as we need it.
Yep.
So we got a consistent response. No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Reed?
Yeah, no, it just, like you said, when the project comes in under budget, there's not really a lot of questions to ask, but good work. And yeah, I do obviously agree with Eric's comment, a small increment to get the roof warranty, that seems like a no-brainer as well, just to add that cost in, especially because it's already under budget. So yeah, good work.
Christie?
Agree. I have no questions.
Okay, that was good. I have written in my notes, roof investigation of insulation. Thank you for anticipating that question. I appreciate it. I am always delighted when it comes in, when you guys are wrong, and it comes in under the engineer's estimate. So I'm thrilled. I think $7,000 is a pretty good deal for what we're getting. So I'm in favor in going with all of that. So with that, I will make a motion to award the 2024 capital building project to Key Contractors for $788,033.
I will second.
Any further discussion? Just one question that I forgot to ask. Has anyone done any work with Key?
Yes, we've worked with them a lot.
Okay,
They're a
fantastic.
very reputable contractor. Do a good
Great.
job.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, item 8.3, the sign ordinance amendment. Ms. Smith. Mr. Anderson, what are you pointing at? Mr. Anderson.
Thank
I
you.
think Aaron would be going with it, but.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, again. So it's been a handful of months since we've talked about signs. In the meantime, since we had that work session, that was a robust discussion back in, gosh, I think it was March, I want to say. There's been a lot of work by staff to really try to hone in on what those council goals were that we discussed. I know that there was some review of other ordinances and things that other communities are doing to try to find that, thread that needle, if you will, because I know that we were talking about some things that were very potentially difficult to accomplish, and I'm optimistic that, I think we got to a place that hopefully the council is pleased with. But what I'll say is there's really two things that staff is bringing tonight for your consideration and recommending approval of. One is a motion to adopt the ordinance, which would amend a couple sections in the city code related to signs. The ordinance does a couple things with respect to temporary signage. One, it prohibits it really altogether, except for important communication and announcements related to local events and other things that are authorized through city-approved permits. One is through the large event permitting, process, and another would be through the second item on your agenda tonight, which is a proposed policy to allow for local organizations, local businesses, other public entities, not just the city, but maybe neighboring cities or the county, anyone holding events that are in Carver to apply to staff to post temporary signage in 5 different locations that staff identified. We would allow, city communications through these organizations. And before I move on from the ordinance, one other thing that I think that's important to really highlight as it relates to the ordinance is it's going to allow properties in the central business district to continue locating up to 3 signs within the public right-of-way, just given how tight obviously this area is down here. There's really no room for signage. Right now we have an imperfect, I would say, method of allowing that through what we're calling temporary signs, but the code technically doesn't allow those signs on Mondays and Tuesdays. So it's been, I think, a nightmare and very difficult to enforce. I assume isn't very consistently enforced due to that. And what we talked about doing here was allowing that. It would be through the normal sign permitting process. So a property owner or a business would still have to come and just make sure the city is aware of it and it fits the criteria. It can't be too large, and it has to be in a place that would allow for ADA type accommodations for people that may need to use the sidewalks and things like that. But it really does retain that ability for, I think, a lot of, which I took away as an important thing from the council, as a way for our downtown business owners and other entities that are downtown to communicate things to the public and to, most importantly, engage and provide communications to people that are, walking around or driving around that area. And then the final thing that it does is does add to the city's fee schedule. This is the ordinance. It creates a relatively modest application fee just for the staff time and energy. I think that's going to go into the building permit team, or Aaron's team, I should say, to review those applications, make sure that they're able to enforce it, to tell people, your application looks good, you can put signs in these locations at a park or in front of City Hall or whatever the case may be. But we did talk about incorporating that fee as well in the event that the council is receptive to and interested in the policy. I think these things can be mutually exclusive. You don't have to take them as a package deal. What I would say is if you have issues with the policy, but you want to adopt the ordinance because that achieves some goals that you're interested in, we may just have to amend the last part of that ordinance to remove the fee that would go along with that policy. So there's some interaction between these two things, but again, I would maybe take them individually. If you have questions, Erin is happy to answer. I think what would be some of the planning related things. She walked the council through the sign ordinance back in March. I can answer any of the text questions or from the legal perspective if you have questions. And one thing, I don't know, Erin, if you want to highlight any of this or talk about it, but one question that the council had was, what are other cities doing to allow this whole right-of-way signage issue, and how can some entities put signs up in communities and others can't, and is there a way to do that? I think what we found, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you kind of took the pulse around the community and around the area, and there really a lot of cities were facing the same challenges that we were facing, and it really came down to they have rules in place, but they're either not being enforced or it's really hard to enforce them consistently, just like what we talked about at our work session. But I don't want to steal your thunder, so go ahead.
It's gone. I'll also say the Planning Commission reviewed this a couple of times. They held the required public hearing since it's part of the zoning code, so the Planning Commission has reviewed and recommended it back to the City Council.
Did anybody show up at the public hearing? Was there any public comment?
No.
Right. Reed, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I I can tell there's a lot of work being put into it. And then again, the planning commission, I wasn't actually able to attend that meeting, but I watched the video online. So there was a good discussion there. I do like that we were able to find a way to keep the signs for community events at city parks and property. I think that was a key thing for me, is some way to allow them to advertise their event. And then on the legal perspective, just you're confident that the sign ordinance and the messaging requirements meets the First Amendment and all the required legal.
I do feel pretty good. I mean, I feel good about it. It's unique, it's different. But there was a recent, I alluded to this without trying to get too into the weeds in my memo, but there's a recent Supreme Court case out of Boston where the city of Boston was being very selective about who could fly flags at City Hall during different events, and that provided cities with guidance about how you can create policies that really, as a city, what you're doing by creating this policy is you're speaking. You're not opening a public forum or creating a way for other people to speak. Now they're doing it through the city, but you're saying what they can and can't put in those areas. And the important part about this policy is the intent here is to use our public property to communicate things of interest to the public for everyone's benefit, including the city's benefit, which I think from a public safety standpoint, people are going to know more maybe about what's going on in an area when there's an event planned, and they're not going to have as much question about that. Or if people do have questions or roads are closed, they're going to know from these communications. So I think it all sort of stems from the fact that this is the city using its voice to decide what it wants to put on city property based on the parameters in the policy. And to me, it's very much akin to a lot of cities now you see have these sort of dynamic signs outside their city halls that they use to communicate things about local businesses, things about community events, things about city council meetings and when those will be. To me, it's very similar, if not the same concept. It's just instead of doing it on a dynamic sign that's going to change script every however many minutes or seconds, we're doing it through our policy and with physical signage in parks or on city hall property or in other areas. So yes, that's a long-winded way of saying
Good.
I feel good about it. I think it really is the only way to achieve what I felt was a pretty strong consensus from the group about what you wanted to see in the community in terms of temporary signage. So,
yeah. And then I'm sure this question will be asked again, but the allowing or specifying the specific locations still allows us to prohibit signs like on the side of the road or wherever where we by intersections where we didn't want it, right? Where we can discriminate because it's city property, right? Where we can.
Well, yes. I mean, I would say we don't want to necessarily pick and choose which signs we remove.
Well,
But
yeah, that's what I meant.
consistent
Like
enforcement
location.
is fine,
Yeah,
and
okay.
yes, right-of-way signage,
Content.
temporary or permanent, is except for in the central business district,
Yeah,
not
okay.
going to be allowed.
Sure,
So if people
okay.
want to put signs on their property, it's going to have to be set back from the right-of-way,
Okay.
which is for public safety reasons, and that's City Boulevard. It messes with sight lines. It creates issues with plows sometimes, depending on where they're pushing snow. But yes, that's
Excellent.
intended to be covered here too.
Okay, good. That's all I had.
Christie?
So I have a number of things that I need some clarification on, and a few things that I want to talk to the rest of the council about, possibly an update or two. In section 2, under B3, so it says that, and as I read this, to make sure I'm reading this correctly, this now, the page is 3
Page 5.
of the actual, but it's 5 of 14.
5 of, yeah.
So 5B3, so we're talking here about having one sign per property. Now, this could be your home property, right? Like this, we're talking about residential.
I believe so. This is a provision that we're not amending, so I guess I might ask Aaron to even jump into and help if I don't know the answer to this, but are you looking at the one non-illuminated freestanding sign?
Right, and the reason I'm asking
Yep.
about this is that, we've all seen the Chaska Hawk signs, right? Where you've got a child in football, So if we are only allowing one per yard, if you have 2 kids in high school, will you get to pick and choose which one you put on?
Yes, it's which one you love most.
Right, I guess that's what I'm reading, that's what I'm reading.
I don't think we'd ever be in the position that we would enforce that.
Okay, but if we're going to create ordinances, then I have an issue of things that we have in here that we're not going to enforce. So I appreciate you saying that, and that's, I'm not saying that you're doing something wrong or that, but if we're gonna have something in here that says this is the standard, it's in our ordinance, I don't think we should turn a blind eye and say, well, except for that one. So,
So first of all, this provision has always been there. I mean,
Right.
I guess to your point, it's a policy question. How many signs do you want? These are only signs that are exempt from the permit requirements. You know, this is why people can put a real estate sign up when their house is for sale. They don't have to come and get a permit for it. I keep knocking my microphone. But, you know, if you want people to do more than one, you know, is 2 or 3 or 4, I mean, how many do you want to do? Some people have 6 kids and maybe they want 6 signs. And so I guess what I would say is, this provision has been, I don't know how long it's been there, but it's an existing provision that we're not changing. And if the council wants to change it before they adopt the ordinance, we can take direction before we do anything tonight, certainly.
Just to clarify, you just said that this is only if it applies to the new permitting requirement, right? So you putting your own signs about your kids in the yard doesn't really fall into that, does it?
This is so the category of signs we're talking about here are types of signs that are exempt from the permit requirements of the city code. So this is telling everybody that you can have one non-illuminated freestanding sign per property that doesn't exceed 12 square feet, provided, you know, that, you know, it's set back from the public right of way and that sort of thing. So that's the existing standard in town. And I guess I would push back politely on Aaron's comment. I mean, if the city receives a complaint and someone's violating this, I think the city would be hard pressed not to enforce it. But is staff out there going, you know,
Actively
taking inventory
counting,
on this
yeah.
stuff? You know, that isn't, I don't think that would ever be contemplated, but no, I mean, these are the existing standards.
right, so
Yeah.
I think that something needs to be done about that, because then if.
What are you proposing?
What I truly would propose is that if it's your own property and you wanna have signs that follow your 10 feet back from or whatever the right of way is, that you can put all the signs you want. I mean, that it's your property. If you have 6 kids, great, put 6 kids sign in and a campaign sign, that's fine. So I'm proposing that if it is your private, personal property, that you can put up the signs that you want, but if it's not more than 12 square feet.
Basically amend it, okay.
So I think the problem with that is you open the doors to public nuisance. Somebody is going to push the boundaries of that. And the reason we have these stipulations in the ordinance is to put some control limits. Up to the city, if we get a complaint, we can take action. But if there's no boundary, someone will push that boundary.
Yeah,
I think that becomes a public nuisance.
Yeah, I guess maybe what I was suggesting was we don't specify a number of signs, but specify a square foot area, right? So if you have 2 small signs, you don't care, but if you have 1 30-foot sign, that's too big, right? I don't know, it's 12 square feet, what is that? 2 by 3, you could have 2 of them, so I don't know, 18 square feet, and then just not specify the number of signs? Is that what you're?
I would prefer not to specify the number of signs. Now, I do understand, Eric, where you're coming from,
Yeah.
yes. Well, or no, I mean, nobody's really pushed it yet that I can remember, but you can, but also, I really think that people should be able to have signs in their yard, it's their property. So,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so I don't know if we pick a number of 5, or if we actually, you know, I kind of like what you're saying is a certain number of square feet can't be, you know, is the max.
What if we just rewrote this to remove one, just that original one, something like not more than 12 square feet of signage, not to exceed 4 feet in height, or be set back less than 10 feet from the public right of way. So it's just, the intent of that, but removing the one.
I like that. I
Yeah.
would also like to increase the square foot to 18 or whatever might, 3 signs might look like.
Yeah, I was just doing
You can
some
have
quick
3 signs
math,
in your
like,
yard.
what is those?
Because I mean, that you could, kids,
The usual sign is like 2 by 3, the little small ones,
they're
right?
probably less than that even.
Less than that, 2 by, so.
Campaign signs are what, 18 by?
Those are not covered
I-
under this,
Just-
just to make sure you,
Yeah.
you're using
Yes,
as a
understand.
final
I'm
reference,
just
I'm
trying to
sure,
figure out,
but,
Like, how big is,
sign
like,
of something.
Yeah,
Is it
24.
How big is
18
12
by
square
18 by
feet?
24 is the typical.
So
yeah,
that's
well,
2
2,
square
3.
footage calculation.
Yeah, Brent, you have a tape measure. No.
Mayor and council, just unsolicited
Okay.
feedback
Yeah.
would be a lot more efficient for you to give feedback on number rather than having our staff get out there and attempt to measure. In most cases, these properties are gonna be on private property. And so it's just from a drive-by, if Nick or Brian are out there, they can count 4 signs, but to say
Okay.
this is 18
Sure.
square feet as
I get
opposed
it.
to 19 is gonna be a challenge.
I say 5.
Why don't we say 3, because that's what we're saying for the business owners.
Anybody else have a comment?
I'm fine with 3, that seems like a lot of signs. Assuming we
3,
actually
3,
enforce
So
it.
5.
my
Yeah,
opinion is to keep the language the way it is.
Okay.
And enforce if necessary.
Aaron, can you remind,
I'll
do
go
you
with and
know
compromise.
off the top of your head, so like what in a residential, let's say an R1 or an R2 district? So, because we're just talking about signs that are exempt from permitting requirements. What are even allowed in those districts, like in R1 or R2 in terms of signage? I mean, aren't typically a lot of allowances for signage on people's property, right?
Right.
Are there
I
any-
can't think of any that are permitted, that would require a permitting process in our general residential districts. Like monument signs are part of the plating process, but beyond that,
Right.
I'm a little concerned that this was not originally in the scope of our discussion.
Yeah.
The number of signs we're now, I think we've got some scope creep here in what we're talking about. This has been part of the existing ordinance up to this point. We have some compromise that we've talked about here that I think we all were agreed that we needed to have that allowed some additional temporary signage. But if we're gonna be making decisions about the number of signs and changing the ordinance, that's a different discussion. That's fine.
I'm happy to compromise with the 3. It's better than what's written in here now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my opinion is if we're updating it, let's try to make it as precise as possible. I mean,
Just, I think, and Dave has this in his memo, but our intention is to bring the entire ordinance back to you. There was a, it doesn't mean you can't talk about this, and there are probably, I could probably find another half dozen things that probably should be changed. Our staff's intent here was to expedite the community event process so that we weren't inadvertently making people that trying to advertise for events code violators. So we, as a staff kind of strategy, bypassed some of those things. We certainly can take any feedback the council has, but it's our full intent as a part of the planning commission's work on the entire zoning ordinance to go back into the sign ordinance. But if you see something that you want to address tonight, you can. However, just know that even with the some of the changes you might make, you're going to see this again probably in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Eric is saying about scope creep on this. So, I guess I would, with the understanding that we're gonna see this
Yeah, I
again
think-
eventually, can we kind of go for what we were looking to intend to change when we talked about this earlier this year? We can absolutely
I have a
go
few
through your
questions.
laundry
Yes.
list,
good, yeah.
but I think with that, I think we should keep it as is.
Okay, knowing that we
Knowing
are
that we'll
going
see
to
it
be
again and have another
Yep.
bite at this apple.
Okay,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Are we?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that
Yep.
makes sense.
Okay.
I just do have a few
Yeah,
other
go ahead.
questions,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's some things that I'm not quite understanding. If we're looking at section 3, number 6, and I'm just looking at a few things, so again, I think that when this comes back, we have flashing, blinking signs. Harvey's has ones that flashes open, is that technically then out of compliance with this?
Yes, I mean, these are zoning provisions, so if these signs have existed since before these rules were in place, those would be legally non-conforming signs.
I don't know, when did this go into place?
I think those signs are interior.
Oh, they're
Okay, so
inside
that's
too?
That
Yeah.
is okay then? Okay.
Could be.
6D, it talks about swinging signs. So when I think about Harvey's and Lisa's and the doghouse, they all have the arm, the creamery, is that considered a swinging sign?
I think we talked about it last time.
Yeah.
But I don't believe, I'm gonna pull it up here now. Yeah, those are ones that are not permanently fixed to, like an adjacent wall. I mean, aren't those ones usually on the building or not? I mean, I don't know what kind of signs you're referring to, but, so the definition of swinging sign is a hinged sign installed on an arm or spar and which is not also permanently fastened to an adjacent wall or upright pole.
To be like a fold-out sign versus, interesting.
So I'm still, because I don't know what the adjacent wall has to do with it. Thank you for reading that, but is that, so what our signs, would you read this as that our signs for like the bars and the creamery and that are in compliance or out of compliance?
In.
In, okay. 6I, and then signs which are painted on or attached to any courtesy bench, trash can. So we have memorial benches in different places, so those would be out of compliance by this sign ordinance too?
I wouldn't consider those signs.
Okay. Okay. 6R, please help me understand, what does visible matter?
Confetti?
I would say signs that like shoot out like fog, like, I don't know, could be anything like that.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe let's clean that up for the next one, so either it means something or it doesn't, because I don't know what visible matter is.
You know it when you see it, and you don't want it. You don't want
You don't
it,
want
which is
it.
why it's prohibited.
Okay, fair enough. Visible matter, okay.
Let's keep odor in there.
Yeah, let's keep
Yeah.
going. Yes.
Section 5, this is just 2A, there is a typo, it says 1 foot of the curb, I'm assuming that's off the curb. So this is the big ones, this is 5C, okay, so this is some new stuff we have in here. So this one talks about A-frame sandwich boards and sidewalk signs within the public right-of-way. So C here says the area of the sign shall not be greater than 6 square feet, and the height of such signs shall not exceed 3 feet. So I ran around town today with my measuring tape, and just to see the typical sandwich board signs that we're used to seeing around town. We're used to seeing the creamery, we're used to seeing Harvey's and the Getaway. So I stopped, and the ice cream shop itself, that is at 45 inches, and the written on part was 35 inches. And then Harvey's, their sign was at 45 inches in height, which again, that one is like a slide thing, so it doesn't have a square in the center. And then the Getaway's height was at 48 inches with 36 inches on the inside for their writing area. So if I'm reading this correctly, the businesses that currently have sandwich board signs that we're typically used to seeing, they would not be included, they would have to buy smaller ones.
So for monument signs going similar, like when a monument sign comes in, we measure the sign face. So thinking about the Timber Creek sign, we don't include the entire monument area as part of the sign face, otherwise their signs would be really close to the ground. So I'd say in general, I think we can make the same application that it's the sign area to be that height.
Okay, so this says sign surface, maybe that needs a little more clarification, but if we're looking at it, the height of such signs will not exceed 3 feet. So if we want that to mean just the writing area, then I think we just need some language in here that says that.
So, and that would, I mean, the point of that language is what we did was we took the existing language that's for temporary signs that are allowed in the central business district. I mean, that has the exact same 3x6 limitation today. And so we were trying to leave that the same.
Sure.
Sounds like maybe maybe there's a desire to increase that from,
So I would either say the sign, if we want to leave it, like, increase it to, 48 inches, or, so it's 4 feet rather than 3, since most of them are near that right now, or better clarify that if we're gonna say 3 feet, that that's just the writing area on the inside.
Do you have a preference that you're proposing?
I would, the 48, I don't think I want to go and measure everybody's little writing area, but I think 48, having 4 feet high, from, the getaway one doesn't seem like it's out of
What
character.
was the highest that you saw?
The getaway.
And they're at 48.
and just to
That sounds
clarify,
good to me.
Christie, these are signs that sort of sit in the sidewalk and then they're taken
Yeah.
in and out every night, right?
Yep.
These aren't the ones that are on the building.
Correct.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
I have
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
concerns with that.
Go up to 48.
48 sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Is that just for the height? The height would go up to
Yes.
4 feet?
Well,
Can you read it, how you're?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did not do the math of what the square footage
on
would
now.
be, but I think we should leave that to Brent with
Yeah.
0.33%. But no, if 4 feet and the increase, whatever that is relevant to that, if you guys can figure that out, I don't have a calculator on me to start doing this, so.
You didn't, I'm not trying to be snarky, this is gonna come out that way. You didn't measure the width.
I did not measure the width on it.
Well,
So
I
let's
guess,
say 4 feet by 3 feet.
Done,
okay,
sold.
So that's 12 square feet. So are you looking to limit the entire face of the sign to 12 square feet?
I guess that's what we have in the other ones. Does that make sense?
Would we have to double it being a sandwich board sign?
I mean, it would be I would say per side,
Okay.
right?
Okay, are we good there? We're still,
So, well, I want to because if the council's gonna approve this tonight, I want to make sure we have the
Yeah, sure.
language
Yeah.
straight. So right now it says the area of any sign surface shall not be the greater of
6.
than 6 square feet, and the height of such sign shall not exceed 3 feet. So you're saying the area shall not exceed
At-
12 square feet, and the height of such sign shall not exceed 4 feet.
Now, if I,
But let's just clear
Oh,
this up real
okay.
quick, Reed. Is that what you're saying?
yes, so 12 and then 4, yes.
Okay.
I guess my question is,
Right? Is that
the area of any sign surface, like,
square feet?
Dave just said, now, if we have 2 sides, does that already add up to 12? Because if we have 6 on one
Is that
side
per
and
side?
6 on the other?
He said per side.
Or per side? No, but does the current?
We can clarify it to say
Yeah,
per side.
I did say 6 feet per side, right? And it gives us 12 total?
He's gonna change it to say.
Oh, okay, sorry, I missed that. Okay, good.
So that's, okay. So is that 36, why was my brain not doing math?
Yeah, so,
The height of any surface,
Yep.
so 5C.
I'm just trying to make sure that, so we have
Yeah.
12 now is what's gonna go in there, right? So 12 and 48. Is that right?
Not be greater than 12 square feet.
And height not to exceed 48. They still have to be within the bounds of the ADA accessibility.
Right, I was
Okay.
gonna say that.
Mayor and council,
Yes.
could I just offer that you give, like, you don't take action on this tonight, and whatever
Sure.
amendments that you wish to make, we can give you another draft. I hate to see a design build this and not have written text in front of you to take action, so,
okay.
take all the time you need on this, get comments from residents, but I think there is a couple of things that can be smoothed out, and this, knowing the amount of time that we've spent in work sessions on this, I want to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting, so
Sure.
that when it's enforced, you feel confident in that.
Okay.
I'm almost there. So my last one is the park locations that we listed were mostly down here, and they're ones that we typically think of as where we have our activity going on, community park, depot park. We have new parks up, Ironwood. I'd like to see those parks included in this. I mean, with the fields up there, we have park shelters up there. It's very possible that someone's going to have their graduation party and they would put a sign there that says, tonight's our graduation party. So I don't want to exclude the other parks in this. I think we should include them, considering what may or may not come, especially in a park as big as Ironwood that might have more activity there. I mean, we have the concerts there that are happening right now. I think it would be advantageous to have a sign there so people know that that's happening. And not just consider what we normally think of as our active parks down here with Depot and Community, and
So what's your suggestion?
add all the parks in. They still have to go through the permitting process, still has to follow the rest of the guidelines. we're just allowing if someone wants to have something at Lions or at Ironwood, that they can have a sign there too.
Thoughts, council?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good addition, right? Like if you have baseball tryouts or soccer tryouts at Ironwood Park, you'd be able to put up a sign, like soccer tryouts today or something, right?
I'm a little inclined to say that because this has gone through planning commission review, I want to keep it to what they approved. I think we can always add this in as we want to expand that, but these are really the areas that we've traditionally used and that folks have reached out to us, so I think I'd like to keep it to what it's.
In the planning commission, did they talk about other parks?
They went through the list.
So,
Right, I
the
realize that,
they
but-
talked about the ordinance, because it was a zoning amendment. The policy was not brought, that's strictly a council policy directive that will be, that was not considered by planning commission, because to me, that's outside of their purview.
Thank you, I stand corrected.
So this isn't a decision I would make tonight. If we want to continue the discussion on it, that's fine, but I'm also going to put that back into, this is creeping into changing other parts of the ordinance we have planned to address. So we'll table that for another discussion. But as it sits now, I wouldn't vote to change that.
Okay, I don't hear a majority of support for that. Well,
Hold on, I just want to ask one question. So Eric, when you said that that's outside of this, a lot of this came forward tonight because we're trying to have the city have a permitting process to use the different parks in town. So you don't think that this part of the discussion falls underneath that?
So this was a compromise to allow temporary signage in city right away. The parks weren't included in that discussion, correct?
So I think we're talking about two things. So the ordinance does address the right-of-way issue for the central business district. What I believe Councilmember Mock is talking about now is the policy, which is at the end of the materials, and it actually allows temporary signage on city-owned property. It's not public right-of-way, it would be on property the city owns. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're in favor of the 5 locations plus additional city property. Is that what you're
Correct,
suggesting?
yep. So thank you for saying it was in the policies. But yes, it is in the policy that we're looking at right now tonight, and it states just those City Hall, gazebo, community conversation, and depot.
Yeah, I would support adding the rest of the city parks, Ironwood, Lions, and Bluff.
And there's
They've
Overlook
got
in there
Depot,
too.
Overlook.
and Riverside, but I don't
Riverside.
think anybody drives past.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think Overlook and Riverside are gonna be our biggest ticket items for this one.
I don't think we need to include all the parks.
I think Ironwood at least, right? I mean, that's a big, right, people driving by, and there's a lot of, we have a picnic shelter there, right? That seems one that would be useful,
I
right?
think Ironwood should be added.
Like, this is an example of like graduation party or baseball tryouts or end of year picnic, right? They have a little sign up.
Thoughts? I feel like we're
So-
stuck.
Yeah, and again, so for the folks that are here today, I think our city attorney said that this has been a healthy and robust conversation. This has been not just hours, but probably tens of hours
Yes.
on this topic. And I'm really happy that we've gone from a decision that was all or nothing, because that's where we were. It was all or nothing. And we've reached some compromise on temporary signage, but here again, I'm worried that, it's just more visible signage. I'm not in support of, I'm not against a further discussion. We can have a work session about it, but I really want to limit where people see signs. Temporary signage compromise. It's great we've reached that. I don't want to open the door to unlimited signs in someone's yard. I don't know that I want to open the door to having signs all in and around in our parks. Maybe that's a future change, but I'd really like to focus on what we had decided to do, which was the compromise around temporary signage in the places we've talked about so far. I'm not there on the parks. I'm sorry.
Do you think just adding Ironwood Park is beyond the scope? I mean, I see that as a community, right? It's one of our larger parks that has picnic shelter. There's many events going on there, right? Maybe, I guess think practically, right? There's someone having a party and there's baseball traps, so each one could have a sign pointing the right way. Now you're probably not getting
Respectfully, there isn't
confused.
baseball at Ironwood.
Well, okay, soccer.
I know,
Sorry.
you're just throwing it out there.
Soccer or football, right? I mean, I think.
We're losing our audience.
Yeah, sorry. I guess that would just be my point. Just, I think I see your point. We don't need it everywhere, but I think that one is a big enough park where it would be helpful.
Well, I'm willing to talk about it, but I won't make a decision.
Tonight? Okay.
Tonight on that. I'm sorry.
Sure, no, that's okay.
Yeah. For me, this feels like a pilot, and I think we should see how it goes before expanding the scope.
Yeah, still meeting. Yep, that's that's everything.
Right? Here.
Well, I guess I already.
We had it.
So, but I do appreciate all of the discussion. Christie, thank you for bringing up a couple of points I think I would brought up as well. So I think we've covered it.
All right. For me, I like how this turned out. And when we were sitting in that room in March, I didn't think I would. This started off with me saying, why can't we remove, you guys can probably say it with me, the hang your Christmas lights on your house, signs that are still up in certain neighborhoods in March, April, and why those temporary signs that weren't allowed didn't get removed. It expanded when we peeled back the layers of the onion to not only look at the temporary signs along streets in our community, but also to modernize a really, really outdated ordinance in our downtown area from a bygone era where Carver was occasional shop central and didn't have businesses the majority of the businesses weren't open 7 days a week. So as our business community has evolved and grown, we were able to accommodate those folks through that. I think that the compromise on city-owned property, once I heard the proposal a couple of times, because Eric gives me a hard time that I didn't like it when he said it, and then it was said again, and I like it, so that will forever be a joke between us. I think that that's great, and I think that that was a really good compromise of us getting this done. I'm bummed that with as quickly as this has worked, we are not in a place where we can move this forward tonight. But I want to get it into a good place where we're all happy with it. I do have some concerns about scope creep, and I do think, kind of to what you said, and to what Aaron pointed out, knowing that we will see this again, I think we will get another bite at the apple and we can dive in really deep. But it's right now just kind of addressing that downtown area and the city-owned properties. So, with that, is there anyone here? Oh, that's where I was going to go. Is there anyone here, Mary, are you here to make comments on this? I am. Okay, come on up. Or Dean. Oh, I'm sorry. Dean, no, you can go next.
No, go ahead.
Mary, we know who you are, but if you'd introduce yourself and give us your address, that would be great.
Sure. Mary Williamson, 120 3rd Street East, P.O. Box 384. And as well, owner of Ripple Art Studio, 304 Broadway. So I think some of the questions I have, relatively speaking, are more about the language in some of the ordinance pre and currently being discussed. And I guess what I'm asking first is to please speak to me like I'm dumb and explain to me a few things. Because what I'm not understanding or hearing clearly, and reading through this, the one that's been marked up, I guess I'm a little bit confused about what's being allowed. How is it being allowed? How long these things can be out, and how much money is this gonna run up a business? So let's take a couple things at a time, and maybe you can just clarify them for me. The sandwich board sign, or freestanding upright on legs sign. Like, I think that's what one or two businesses have, those two. So currently, those signs are placed outside every morning a business opens, or when that shop is open. It kind of alerts the community, we are here. It may or may not have direct advertising. It may or may not have a direct call to action. It might just be a message, have a nice day, you know, some whatever. But it lets customers know that that business is open, that there's actively someone there, because they know when they've driven by at night it's not there, and they notice that. So those signs, a sandwich board or the smaller, you know, freestanding sign that they change out the letters on, according to this ordinance, they're only allowed Wednesday to Sundays?
So that's what we were working to solve, but I'm gonna have Aaron answer all your questions, because if you have us answer your questions, you're gonna get 4 different answers. Right?
My computer is dead,
Oh, no.
so that's why it's closed right now.
Okay.
So in general, sandwich boards would be allowed every day of the week. So our old ordinance spoke more to the occasional shops where they were only allowed Wednesday to Sunday. We found it important to get rid of that because that's not how downtown operates anymore.
So that's actually being stricken, because it's not stricken in this.
Are you looking at the old ordinance?
I printed off what was provided for this meeting.
Sorry.
Can you be really specific about what you're looking at?
Section number,
Yep.
It's at the bottom of page 5. You can see where the Wednesday to Sunday stuff is all stricken.
Yeah.
Bottom of page 5 of the materials, of the ordinance itself, sorry.
Section 4C.
C,
Yeah.
even though there's no A.
Okay, but earlier, there's comment about it.
Yeah.
It's written out that that would be something that would be part of the regulatory action that the city could take and requested.
Do you have a section?
Sorry, I did notes and then I printed it out. I should have done the opposite, but
I think you're reading the policy, Mary. There we go. So you're talking.
there was a comment about,
There's section.
I mean, he showed me that,
Yep,
yeah.
okay.
But,
So if you go to the bottom of page 6 of the ordinance, all that underlined language is what's being proposed to allow up to 3 signs in the central business district. that
Okay.
meet those criteria. And the council just a little bit ago talked about 5C, which they're gonna, it sounds like there was a consensus to make some changes to allow for larger signs.
okay, so the comment is they are allowed while we're open. They're not allowed to stay out overnight?
Correct.
Okay. We can have up to 3 of them. Now, the next question, I'm sure you're all assuming I'll ask, which is right-of-ways. So at this juncture, if I have one sign, I can put it outside the front of my shop without permit, without discussion. I can do it, it's within the size requirement. You don't have any say on what I put on it, correct?
Correct.
Now, if I want to take a similar sign and put it over across the street on the corner on the sidewalk area at Gazebo Park, what do I have to do now? If it's one of those 3 allowable signs. Now, do I have to go get a permit? Does that need approval?
At a gazebo park or in the right of way?
In the right-of-way on the sidewalk?
I'm not sure you can do that, because that is, the issue here is that there is and this is going to get
Dicey.
little in the weeds on property law, but the city does not own the right of way. It has an easement to put streets there and other public improvements that is a certain scope. It cannot tell people what signs they can put. They cannot tell people what improvements they can put in there. They can maintain their right of way, and the property owner, the underlying fee owner, can do anything they want because it's their property as long as it doesn't interfere with the city's right to have a street or a sidewalk there. So I don't know the particular area you're talking about here because I don't know which corner, and I don't know who owns it or who owns the adjacent property. But that very much depends. Very much.
Gazebo Park, it's a city park
Okay.
on both sides.
Okay.
So the sidewalks that are on that corner, both are attached to city property. So if you're gonna uphold what you stated for the corner of Broadway and Third Street West, that building, anything on that bump out, which is exactly across the street, that the underlying property owner apparently gets preferential decision-making power on an easement that the city controls, cares for, and maintains.
But
However,
the city's easement does not allow it to pick and choose what signs go there. It
what's your
allows it-
comment about a pure tenant easement then?
Excuse me, I'm not sure.
An
I
A
understand
pure
that
tenant
question.
easement.
An A pure tenant easement, a pertinent easement?
What's your definition? How do you define it in this situation?
Every easement's different, so easements come in all different shapes and sizes. I don't want to get into a debate with you about this. I'm
I'm
happy
not-
to talk to you offline. It's a little awkward having the discussion in a council setting because, you know, frankly, I'm not
Well, you're
exactly sure
using
what
that
property you're talking about.
discussion to apply it across the street and say that the decision you made previous
So
is what you're leaning on to talk about Gazebo Park, if that's a city park.
I think I can help.
Why is this so hard?
No, I think,
Sure.
so this is gazebo park, so it's the sidewalks that border it. So in that case, the city could give permission for someone to be on the sidewalk adjacent to gazebo. I think what the city attorney is referring to is if it was another intersection where it was a private property owner, then it couldn't be in the right of way.
Okay, so
However,
then,
I would tell cities not to do that because cities are different from private property owners in that if they're gonna start allowing individuals to put signs into certain areas, they cannot tell other individuals they can't put a sign there. It's what's called a limited public forum. That's a First Amendment term. That's how, it's a constitutional issue. So, if the city starts saying you can put sign A on my property, Mary, because you have a property there downtown and we want you to be able to advertise for your business, when someone asks someone else that maybe wants to put some non-commercial speech maybe or other things, the city would have a very difficult time and frankly probably could not say no to that person because by letting somebody put things on city property, they're creating a limited public forum. And that's the issue that we have had countless discussions about at work sessions. And to me, I would always tell a city not to do that because it's a very hard thing to go back on. And once you create that forum, you're not going to be able to control it, enforce it, and it can.
okay, so I guess,
a lot of-
Mary,
I'm asking
can I
this for
add
quick-
something?
Yeah.
So last summer, we had a very challenging time related to temporary signs. So Brent and I, trying to be helpful, said that businesses could put signs on city-owned property, so like adjacent to Gazebo Park in front of City Hall. We didn't run it past Dave because we were trying to be good friends and we thought he'd probably say no. So that's how we got to this point here. So with Dave's opinion now, I think we can continue this conversation, but adding some feelings into that. It was a rough summer with signage. There was a lot of people that were really mad. So we were trying to figure out a way that we could support businesses, and that felt like an easy way to control what we were doing, understanding that people were struggling.
so then that would roll then to another corner, other corners. So City Hall is on one corner, Gazebo is on another. Since we're talking about the business district, as the mayor has distinguished, that's kind of the focus here. Then the corner on Main and Broadway, on east and west. So on one side, the city would, Lisa's Place owns one corner and Greg Witt owns the other corner. And there's sidewalks on both corners. So according to what I've been told and what I'm understanding, if I have permission from that property owner, I may put a sign on that sidewalk. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
That's true.
So I could put signs on those corners, on those sidewalks.
If you have permission from the underlying property owner.
And if they don't exceed the height, size standards and create issues with pedestrian, traffic, ADA, accessibility and those things. Up to, each property owner can allow up to 3 adjacent to their property under the proposed regulations.
Okay. Okay, I think I got that one sorted. And I guess I would argue that point, and I'd love to talk to you more about it, because I still don't think it's clear, but. Okay, so then in the park, in a park properly, you've distinguished 5 parks. We could say the 5 original parks of Carver before new development. So in these parks, closely adjacent to the downtown district, you are going to require that a permit be applied for 5 days in advance of a desired time to put a sign up. That sign then can be up for how long?
7 days.
7 days. And so we're throwing out the Wednesday, Sunday thing. That's gone. So once the permit is given, whether it starts on a Tuesday or a Friday, you don't care. You get 7 days.
Correct.
And that now is going to be a $20 fee. And that's for the request. And then you get how many? You get 7 signs total in town, in the entire city?
Gets up to 3 per, it's not 5 parks, it's 5 city-owned properties, so 3 or 4 of them are parks, but one is like, for example, City Hall.
City Hall, right, which has no green space, so I don't know what you do there, but whatever.
It's like when the Lions have a pancake breakfast and want to put a banner on the front of City Hall. That's the example for City Hall.
Right,
So it wouldn't be like a,
stick inside,
yeah,
right.
correct.
Okay, so how many signs are allowed?
Up to
I think-
3 per location.
Up to 3 signs per location. So if I was having an event, I have an endless number of signs I can put out in town, as long as I don't do more than 3 per location? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, that's what's up for debate. The council hasn't approved any of this yet.
But
so.
Mary, you
Yeah.
cannot just put them freely throughout town in the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you applied for a permit to put 3 signs in Gazebo Park, yes, that is fine for 7 days. If you put signs up and down Jonathan Carver Parkway, those will likely be removed.
So I guess then we'll go back to the private property and what is considered
If a
on
resident, so if you're talking like Art Wander, and if
Yeah.
a resident wants a
Specifically,
sign
yeah,
in their
that's-
yard, that is totally fine. But if you put them right behind the curb along Jonathan Carver Parkway, we are going to remove them.
So there will no longer be allowed.
They never have been allowed.
What about Parade of Homes, Farmers Market, builders?
Correct,
So
so
none of these will be allowed as well, correct?
the farmer's market would be a city event, so we are able to put signs in our right of way. Parade of Homes, no. If someone is doing directional sign to a garage sale, no. If it's someone putting Christmas lights on a house.
So no garage sale signs are going to be allowed yet?
They aren't right now, so we're going to continue that.
That feels just warm and cozy.
Anything else, Mary?
Yeah, I do have a couple more things. Sorry I wasn't able to make the public hearing apparently that occurred. I never even knew about it, but there was under section 3, page 4, specifically wind-activated devices other than flags and banners.
Is this intention for like, I'll just say those big tube little men that you see at the car
Yes.
dealership that are
Fair.
flailing all over the place?
Yes.
Okay. So my things that I sell, that I hang outside, those are okay?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I wouldn't consider that a sign even.
I wouldn't either. That's why I was like, what the heck?
That's an existing provision too, so if
Yeah.
I suspect if you had stuff that was a problem under this, you would have known about that already.
Okay. Commercial signs, this is out of the ordinance number 8, I guess. I couldn't tell you what section, I didn't write that down. Commercial signs are incompatible with residential uses. It must be strictly monitored, so that goes back to my question we just went over, I guess, right? So if I wanted to go purchase a bunch of small, like the Art Wander signs, I couldn't go put those in residential unless they're on someone's property that's given me permission.
Correct.
And then I can do as many as I want, correct?
Yes.
All right. I have another artist that's in Carver, just outside of downtown. It's a countywide event. Does she need to apply for a permit to put the signs she's putting out because they aren't directly connected to our businesses? It's to the event itself.
Would it be in someone's yard and they've given you permission to have that sign in the yard?
Yeah.
Then no.
Okay. It would only be if I wanted it to be at a park or one of the properties.
Correct.
Okay. What is number 6 about trees? What's that all about? The trees? We want big trees? What was that all about?
Where are you referring to?
See that?
Swing signs. Apologies, I didn't have it printed.
I see that one, Mary, it's in.
What's that
I would
about?
put that into, so this ordinance was probably written 30 years ago, and so I put that into the category of a bunch of things that need to be cleaned up when
Okay.
we do the sign physical later this year, or maybe
Okay.
it's part of it's right now.
Okay. Devices, and then, I think the last, I guess my other thing was about the language, which I started with. So my concern was in that letter that prefaced the entire thing. And I had I didn't like the way it was worded. It felt a little bit concerning. The concern under your thing, it said, quote, ability to craft regulations that prohibit signs in the business district due to lot size and restrictions. So can someone define that? What's that mean? And why are we just focused on the downtown business district and not also the commercial district building up on 6th and Jonathan Carver Parkway? Will that as well be governed similarly or have its own ordinance?
What are you
So,
pulling from, Mary?
That's my memo.
It's in the
Oh.
memo, and
There
it's
it is.
under the findings, purpose, and intent, I believe, right? Or am I on the wrong sheet? Wait, I might
So,
have the wrong
Mary,
one.
I guess we're looking for
Yeah.
feedback on the ordinance or the policy, not on Dave's memo to council.
Okay,
Because that's, as you know, that's just the document that he uses to summarize what
Yeah.
he's showing with us and to give us some background on where he came from to
Okay, I
provide this information.
agree, I totally get it. I guess my only other thing then would be, if this is not gonna be voted on tonight, then I will hang it up, but I do have some concerns about the language in the ordinance itself
We
that
will
was pulled from that he pulled to make the memo. So I guess I didn't have time to really integrate it all.
So we're not gonna make a decision on this tonight.
Yeah.
I would strongly encourage you to reach out with Brent or Aaron to connect with Dave or whomever we need to so that you can feel like you're providing the
Yeah.
feedback that you want to with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just clarity. I think it gets a little bit heavy with the language, so it makes it a little harder.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think it is something that's extremely important, and I would really hate, on a personal note, to see this town overly regulate the ability for the community to share the successes, the businesses, the opportunities, and the things that go on, because that's what makes this town this town. And if you strip all that away, Councilman, you don't have that.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks.
Dean, appreciate your patience.
My name's Dean Nelson. I am the current president of the Carver Lions. My address is 5425 Highway 212, just outside of town. Got new neighbors right across the street.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just have some quick questions on the signage. As a service organization, I know a lot of you have seen them. In the spring and the fall, I put signs up all around the outskirts of town for our functions. I was just wanting to get clarity on where I can put the signs and where I can't. Now, you talk, Aaron said Jonathan Carver Parkway. I'm sure you've all seen them there. I start all the way up on County Road 10 and 11, and I put them, not every intersection, but every other. I put them by the bus garage. I put one in the front of the fire station. I used to put it on this side of Community Park, but it's easier on the fire station, because then I just go right out to East Union and so forth, then come back in, go down County Road 40, out to 61, so forth. I just need to know clarity where I can put them, where I can't put them. If I get a permit to put them, like the sign that you all see on the railing out in front of the hall, if I get a permit to put the sign there, and say a sign at the depot and wherever else, will that permit cover putting them along Jonathan Carver Parkway?
No,
No. So I can no longer put them along Jonathan.
you can't now.
Okay, that is one of the questions that I had. Private property owners along County Road 40, coming in past, like Dwight Schultz and them, if I get
Private
approval
property
from.
owners throughout the community.
Okay. So no place along Jonathan Carver from,
Well, yeah, Carver Station if you get the permit, and Community Park.
okay,
So if you apply for a permit, if you want to have signage down here, pork chop dinner.
Yep.
If you want to also include in that, you can put them at Depot Park, Gazebo Park, Community Park, Carver Station. There's one more. And, yeah, City Hall. So
Okay.
you could put them on those locations.
Yep.
Private property owners, so if every Lions member wants to put signs in their yard, totally fine.
okay. I don't have a whole lot of signs to put up, but I try and do it around the outskirts of town so I can get everybody that's leaving and coming into town to see them. And I've been doing that for 15 years, and all of a sudden it's like, I can't.
Just to clarify, that assumes the council approves the policy too. I mean, it was presented to them tonight, and it sounds like there's some support for it, but it hasn't been adopted yet.
Yeah, and that's
Just
fine.
One clarification point, Dean. If it's outside city limits, the city doesn't regulate it. So if it's at Engler and on JCP, that's not our business. If it's out towards East Union, again, not our business.
Yeah, I put them, I start out on 10 and 11, and then I put one at 40 and 11, then I put one by Fleet Farm, and then I just work my way
Which
in.
doesn't mean it won't be regulated by somebody else.
by us.
We're
Not
just
by
not
us,
touching
yeah.
it.
Okay, and if I have any questions, I can always talk to Christine, too. Give her a call. Okay, I guess I'll get my permit. So, another question. If I put my signs out, usually I put them out on a Sunday afternoon. I get the permit, say, on Thursday, put them out Sunday, and I can take them down by, say, Friday or Sunday at the latest, right?
Correct, 7 days.
Sweet, I can handle that. Been doing that all along. Where are we going here? Okay, so nothing on there. I guess that answers my questions. I have one quick question for the council. Being a Lions member, we've been doing this for the last 3 years. We've been recycling plastic, okay? I just talked to Brent a week ago about this. I have 3 benches that are made of the Trex decking. Okay, we've recycled over 2,200 pounds of plastic in just over 3 years. So we get the benches made for nothing. We donate the plastic, the company makes the benches, they send them to me, I put them together. I have 3 of them right now. We're close to getting a 4th. And I'd like to know if the city would like to have these benches put someplace. Right now, I have 2 of them sitting up behind the fire station, inside the fence. I have 1 in my garage, not assembled, waiting to find out where we can put them. So I would like some input from the city council to let Brent or Paul Schultz or somebody can let me know where we can put these.
So
'Cause we're not
last,
gonna keep doing this project and getting benches if I'm not gonna put them anymore.
is one going at Lions Park or is that one already in?
None of them are in.
Okay, so
There's
we
2
had-
up behind the fire station and 1 in my garage, and the 4th one should be coming next spring.
Okay, so we as Lions had talked with staff last year, about the one at Lions Park,
Mm-hmm.
and then about one at Third and Oak, and getting another tree next to it, so it kind of at least brightens up that area a little bit, because obviously we have some city utilities down there. And I think those were the only two that were talked about. from
We'll find a
last
spot
year.
for them. I talked to Paul Schultz right after I got done talking to Dean, so
Okay.
Good.
you'll hear from somebody by the end of the week.
I hope to, because like I
Good,
said,
because
I've had
Sounds
them
like
sit,
we're good, Dean.
Yeah.
pardon?
Sounds like we're good.
I've had them sitting up at the Lion Fire Station for almost a year and a half. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, if
It's been a
nobody's gonna
while.
take them, I'm gonna take them and put them someplace else, so.
Cool.
I just wanted to see if the city had input as to where they might like them, so, but Brent will let me know.
Yeah, the intention is to put them in Community Park close to the Veterans Memorial. There's some older benches that are kind of dilapidated, that are kind of old
Yep.
wood. So our
These will
plan is
last
to
you
put 'em
for
there.
forever.
Do you think with the
Thank you.
You bet,
with
thank
the
you.
new, all this new stuff going up at Lions, maybe since it's the Lion, we can get one of them at Lions though.
Can-
No. I think we should consider getting one up there next to maybe some of our new.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Like I say, I have 3, I'll have a 4th one next spring.
Cool.
Let me know where you wanna put them and we'll put them out there.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Okay, sign work, yes.
On the side ordinance, I just want to bring up a point, maybe a point of clarification to address what I think may be a misunderstanding. Mary, I'm going to speak to something you just said. I think there's a lot of assumptions being questioned here as to where signs can go, but my understanding here is everything that we are doing is actually increasing where signage can go. We are not, the ordinance has a lot of definition of where signs can't go, but we haven't changed where they can't go. That has always been codified in the ordinance. What we are doing, the work we are doing, is expanding where signs can be permitted to go. Correct? We haven't done any work to take away where they can't go. That's already in the ordinance.
That seems correct, yeah. And we're also, I would say, in addition to expanding, we're clarifying, because it's not, it's not entirely clear as it's written, but now we're trying to make it more clear, especially downtown, and especially with this whole temporary signage thing, because that's been a point of confusion for a long time. Yeah.
I think there's assumption that we're suddenly restricting where signs can go, and in fact, we're not. Those have been part of the ordinances, that you can't place signs in those areas. Maybe it's clarification, but I really want to point out that the work that's being done here, all of the hours we've spent, has really been to try to expand in the ordinance where signs can be permitted to go, so you don't have to worry that something you've placed gets ripped out. That we've actually got a methodology to expand where some signs can go, because we want signage that conveys local information to be permissible where we're expanding the right to do so. I wanted to be sure that that's stated out loud, that this was, we haven't put in extra restrictions. Those were already there. We can discuss if we want to make changes to those, but that wasn't the intent of tonight's discussion. It was really around changes to the ordinance that expanded or clarified. That's all.
Thank you for saying that. I think it's an important call out that just because you're seeing my favorite hang your Christmas lights in July signs, or we talked about the get your Shetland pony puppies that's on a barrel or a bushel of hay, like just because you see it out there doesn't mean that it's been allowed. In fact, it has not been allowed per our ordinance. So thanks for the call out. Okay. Dave, do you have what you need from us?
I
To bring us
think
back.
we do. I don't think I have any other questions. Do you, Aaron, on this stuff? No. Yeah, I think we have enough.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Guys, we are 2 hours into this meeting. I need a break.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I will make a motion to recess for until 9:10. That's okay?
Sounds good
I'll
to me.
second.
All right. Thank
Do
you.
that,
All right. Do we need to vote? No.
if you need that,
Do we
great.
need to vote?
You can just, as chair,
Acclamation?
announce a
Okay.
recess. Yep.
Sure, okay,
Okay.
that's good.
city should stay away from.
All right, guys, it is 10 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Up
It's
next.
9:10. It is 9.
So it's past my bedtime. Apparently, it is 9:10, which is the time we agreed to come back. I will call the meeting back to order. Up next, we have Creekside Park plans and specifications. Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Alrighty, so wanted to bring an update to the council tonight on where the Creekside Park plan development is in process here. So just a refresher, this is a project that we applied for grant funding and received $350,000 through the DNR's Outdoor Heritage Grant Program. That grant application included phase 1 build out of the park, which included pickleball courts, small and large dog parks, a picnic shelter, trail improvements, access into the site with gravel parking lot, and other necessary infrastructure to complete that build out. Phase 2, is a future phase, not part of this discussion tonight. It includes kind of a future disc golf park on the east side of the property and associated trail connections to go to that piece of the property. So since the original grant application, staff has made some modifications to that original concept plan, of which adding 2 additional pickleball courts. 2 of those were considered a future phase of the development. Based on input we've received to date, we thought doing the full build out now would be appropriate. So all 4 pickleball courts would be incorporated into phase 1. Slight enlargement of the dog park areas based on community comments, and then going from gravel access roads and parking lot to a paved driving surface was also a change that is in the current plan. The plan also includes the relocation of the archery range from Riverside Park. This is something that's going to be necessary both when the Merriam Junction Trail project will utilize Riverside Park for staging, and then the thinking was that due to Riverside Park's closures periodically due to funding, this would be a spot where there could be a reliable home for the archery range long term. We're currently preparing the plans and specs, so we plan to host an open house on August 13th from 4:30 to 6 o'clock here at City Hall in the council chambers. And ultimately, next steps would be we'd be bringing that back for formal approval from council of approving the plans and specs and authorizing advertisement for bids. So tonight we're just looking to get any additional direction from the council. Financial update. The long-term plan has $875,000 in the plan today. Based on just inflation from when we prepared those estimates a couple years ago and those modifications, as I noted above, we're sitting at about $1,085,000. That's our current engineer's estimate for the project, total project cost. The sources of those funds would be $350,000 in the DNR grant, as I mentioned, and then $735,000 in park dedication funds. The current fund balance in the fund is $618,000 with an estimated end-of-year balance of just over $1 million based on projects, development projects that are currently in the system and anticipating approval by year end. So that's kind of a financial update. I listed the schedule here at the end of my memo, and basically we're looking to continue moving the project towards bidding here in August and September, and hopefully getting a project awarded here this fall where they could probably start doing the dirt work this fall and the mass grading, and then major construction activities happening next spring and summer for a fall of '25 completion. So that's kind of the update, and Aaron and I were happy to open it up for questions tonight and have a discussion. So
Great.
thank you.
Who wants to go first? everybody all at once.
Sure, I'll go. You know, I started working on this, when I was on the planning commission. This has been a long time coming. I'm glad to see we switched to the paved parking lot. I think that's just a lot more maintenance, and it'll just be dust and around the park. Glad to see some more pickleball courts coming in. Now we've got our 2 new ones, so this will be a nice addition there. And then on the specific stuff, I'm a big fan of the natural vegetation, the prairie grass that we have in the median. I think that's a great idea. So I think anything else we can do to incorporate some of the low maintenance and more natural habitat is a great idea. I know that's not specific, and it's still high level concept. And then, yeah, it looks good. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Chris, do you want to go next?
So I want to step back. So previously, as the Park and Rec supervisor between 2007 and 2015, the 2 things that I was consistently asked for, even back then, were dog parks and disc golf. So it's interesting to me that in the work that we've done, that we are still seeing these same things that are being asked for. So when I look at this plan, now all of this may not be everyone's cup of tea. I don't disc golf, but people love it. But to know that over that many course of years, right, like a decade, that I was hearing this same thing, and that now we're having a park that's going to put some of this in place, I think is a good addition for the amenities that we're putting in, because it's been shown that the community has wanted it. And then I do think that the location is going to be great for it. I understand some of the comments about the turn lanes and things like that, about coming in and out. I'm not sure if there's any way that we can mediate that. We did look at having a bridge across Carver Creek farther, and the cost was exorbitant.
Yeah.
To me right now, I mean, this is a junk pile that you drive by every day. Now it's a junk pile that we're kind of used to looking at, but it's a storage area with, we'll just say junk thrown all over the place and piping. If we do look at this and having lights, I really would love to see something besides Cobra heads. You know, down at Riverside Park, we have some solar lighting that was acquired with a grant a long time ago, but it's a softer light. Knowing that some of the residents in this area are concerned about what lighting will look like and will do. Now, I know that we'll do our due diligence to make sure that our foot candles of lighting meet the requirements of the property lines, but I would like to see a softer lighting in there than big Cobra headlights. And I know the archery range is being moved. That hurts a little bit, but I know it has to be. I think that that's a discussion for a later date, whether it gets moved back. What I don't want Riverside Park to turn into is just a nothing land. I mean, we have things down there, so that there are different draws to come to that park. So I would like to, we'll take a look at that again, hopefully. I know this is a big change to the area, and I know not everyone looks at this and is excited for it, and I understand that it's a change and it's hard. I see a lot of good happening here, and I think it's going to turn out to be much better than kind of that fear of having something new and different in the area, which is understandable. Aaron, can you talk just a second about park dedication and how that money is brought to it for anyone in the crowd, or all the people who are online watching at 9:19
Tons
at
and
night?
tons.
So anytime a project is platted, park dedication is required.
What project? You said what?
Any
Residential.
commercial, industrial. So to get to our park dedication number, as part of our Parks Master Plan, which was adopted in 2018, we thought about all of the parks we wanted to see until 2040, and we took estimates of total project cost for all of those parks and divided it out over the different uses. So per residential unit right now, we're collecting $4,070. Per commercial and industrial acre of land, we're collecting $3,030. And park dedication funding is so limited on what you can spend it on. So we're not able to take park dedication funds and pay for road improvements or stoplights or anything outside of a new park development. So that money is strictly used for new park development in Carver. So when Aaron mentioned our current fund balance, that's all from new parks. The money that we're seeing in the hopper that's going to come through, it's primarily from Timber Creek 5, the 2 CDA projects. So it's truly new construction projects that are coming into town to help us build our entire series of parks until 2040.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that people didn't think it was something that we're taxing the general fund for.
Correct.
Thank you.
Eric?
I don't know that I have too many questions. I'm happy to see that we expanded pickleball. That has been in demand. I love to see the redevelopment of what's been a bit of an eyesore at the base of the neighborhood. I think I might have asked this before, but what does it take to bring water and sewer there for permanent facilities for a bathroom?
So there is water and sewer on the site, just because it was formerly a wastewater plant site. So it's generally on the site. It would just be a matter of where the extension would need to go to service the future facilities.
So what would it take then to put a permanent bathroom here as opposed to porta potties?
I think we looked at that briefly, and I think we were looking in the neighborhood of like $50,000 to bring sewer and water services to that location.
So we have wells in our other park that we're using. What would it be to put a well in?
Yeah, for the water service.
Oh,
right?
that was well. I'm confused.
Sorry, I was just mentioning to clarify that, that's just the service that wouldn't include the building, that's
Yes,
just
correct.
to bring the water.
Just
to
the
it.
utility services.
But we wouldn't have to, we run the other parks off of wells, right?
That's just for irrigation.
Okay.
The water and sewer from the
Like community park shelter.
community park is the
water.
city water.
Okay.
yeah.
So a permanent bathroom, what does it cost us on an annual basis to maintain what we're gonna have there in this plan? Do you have an idea of that?
I don't.
No, I mean, anecdotally, it's been, and this is something that the council can address, but anecdotally, we've been moving away from that just because we've just had, frankly, just an awful, terrible time with vandalism, from defecation to burning toilet paper to filling sinks, ripping sinks off of walls. It's just, graffiti of all types and sorts. And yes, you can get that in a satellite restroom, but your downstroke is mitigated by just the kind of construction of it. But you certainly could entertain that. It'd just be a matter of coming forth with like a building design. But as far as like maintenance costs, kind of what I alluded to earlier, we just the size of we just haven't done the exercise of quantifying that kind of cost. We could, and maybe with like just having Lynn as a finance director for a couple of years, as we get forward, we can start to do some of those, I would say, maybe what some people would consider standard, but I would call like a bigger step for like a city of our size to do like ROI, like some sophisticated ROIs and maintenance costs on operational procedures and kind of really dig into the data. We just haven't reached that level of effort yet.
I understand. I guess if we were going to do it, doing it now, we could use park dedication funds to do it. In the future, we couldn't.
You could use park dedication in the future because it would be a new amenity.
Okay.
What you couldn't do within boundaries is, I would advocate that you couldn't replace the community park shelter because one already exists there.
Understood. Okay. I just had a question around the bathrooms. Did we have so the DNR grant, were there any requirements there around what natural planting, friendly planting? Did we have anything in that we were doing or required to do?
So not directly related to the DNR portion of this project, but I want to remind the group and people watching that we received a separate grant process for Carver Creek, so cleaning up the entire creek bed. That's where we did the root wad system I just was looking up. We received roughly $360,000 for that grant project to restore that creek. So there was some tree removal that was required in some areas to create those root wads, and Great River Grading released their RFP today for planting in that area. So it will not only be replacement of the trees, but also there's the property was formerly farmed as alfalfa, and alfalfa has taken over a lot of this area. So we're working right now to get it baled, removed, because it frankly choked out a lot of the vegetation that tried to happen with the creek project this past spring. So this fall, there's going to be really significant planting. I'll forward the RFP to Brent, then he can share it with you all to show the quantity of planting that's going to happen, but it is going to be robust. It's going to be a lot of vegetation and like woody shrubs and species along the creek to create habitat in that area. So not part of the DNR project, but part of our work with Great River Grading on the creek specifically.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for reminding us about that.
And then just piggybacking on Aaron's comments, like this, I'll be selfishly advocating for like the turf of this, or the kind of what grasses to plant to be similar to what we have in Ironwood Park. If you kind of go through the trail section north of the school, I would say economically, it's not in our best interest to kind of maintain kind of wide open grass areas. You know, there might be a spot or two, but generally with all the work that Great River Greening has done, and kind of that median work that somebody mentioned tonight, like what a great way to integrate kind of some traditional like kind of brick and mortar hard surface park amenities with some natural environment to kind of hopefully make them not be such a contrast, but to kind of merge them together. I think phase 2 shows some trails that would go through there, and then long term, something that we've talked to with the county is, you know, frankly, the goal is to bring a regional trail through there that would eventually go through the backside of Mueller's Pit and through to Waconia, and wanting to bring that entire trail system from the downtown as a continuation of the Minnesota River Bluffs Trail through this section and then up through Waconia.
So Brent, then is it maybe better to have a rendering that shows that? Because right now it looks like a whole lot of mowed area.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of the concept. Agreed. I actually, so one of the renderings we have shows those trails. I asked Aaron to take that out just because I didn't want people to think that those were going in with this project, but we can certainly show like a phase 2 that gets into more of that. Happy to.
I think that's
include
good
that.
because,
Yeah.
I mean, there is some naturalness to that area, and I think that is going to show a better representation of what is really intended to be there.
Yep.
Because it does look like big mowed, you know,
Yeah, we can, I think,
fields.
I sometimes get in trouble for doing this, but I think Aaron's team could probably put something together for the public open house on the 12th, right, or the 13th?
13th.
For that, just to kind of get to that point of making sure we have hopefully an adequate representation of the vision for that. It's hard to do it from that top-down perspective, but that's a good suggestion.
And I can include at that open house copies of the RFP that call for specific planting. So it's not turf, it's native plantings, it's woody shrubs, it's trees. So we can have that there as well.
That'd be great. You're good? Okay. I think this is great. I, too, have been hearing people screaming for dog parks. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great that we've used our local resources to incorporate the feedback. I know Dr. Carissa had some feedback on the dog park area that we were able to take into account. Dr. Carissa, if you're not familiar, is the vet at Healing Hands Veterinary Clinic. So I think that's great. I think pickleball courts, I think 4 plus the ones that we'll have in Lions Park is a really great start. Do I think they'll be busy all the time? Yeah, I do. If you just drive past Community Park, those are busy, and those are not permanent pickleball courts. I think these are going to be a really great amenity to our community. I think it's also fantastic that we got the DNR grant for this. Doing some math, it looks like we will be paying $68 of this, so, pennies on the dollar, that's pretty solid that we're getting 2/3 of this, or a third of this paid for, by a grant, which is something that I'm really excited about. Christy, to your point about the lighting, I certainly want this to be neighborly, and I think that this needs to be within our requirements, but I also, like, quite frankly, want to do everything that we can from a lighting perspective to try to keep the riffraff out. In most areas, it looks like the area kind of where the parking lot is, the topography change there is 50 feet, and then as you go a little bit more southern, or I guess east from there, it's 20 feet. So there's a significant elevation change to where the homes are. So I'm not too worried about bleed through of how tall are streetlights? 10 feet?
So what we're proposing right now is similar to what we did in Ironwood Park, like those shoebox style lights, so that it shines more down
Perfect.
than out. So that's what we'd be doing.
Okay.
And that they're probably, I think there's like 12 or 15-foot poles.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not-
So I'm not too worried about those
Yeah.
leading over
Mhm.
into neighborhoods. But yeah, I don't have any other comments.
I had one more.
Go ahead.
One more thing, just, I think Christy had the point of these are new things, right? Things we don't currently have, right? We don't have a dog park and we don't have disc golf, so I think it's a great addition. And like you said, people have been asking for it for a while, so I think it's a really good plan.
Great. All right, Eric, do you have comments?
I do actually have a few more.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for you to limit them to stuff that you haven't emailed us about yet, or that you haven't mentioned tonight, if you don't mind.
No, not at all, but I do have some questions regarding
Absolutely.
some of
Sure.
those that I'd like a response to, too. So, yeah, I'll try to be brief, and quite honestly, it's after 9. I don't function well after 9, so I appreciate.
Same, I think I already demonstrated that.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna be able to really be as articulate as I would like to be. But the first thing I'm gonna say is it is a little frustrating for me, as you could understand, that I was here 2 years ago, and I raised some of these concerns, and, and I get how these things have to move along, and I get the process and stuff. But at the time, I was told there would be chances to talk more generally about the facilities going in there. Now, I don't mind dog parks. I got dogs. I don't mind pickleball courts. I'll probably never play pickleball. I'm just learning what that's, just recently learning what that's all about. It is unfortunate, I'm 70 years old, that all the parks in my neighborhood are not designed for senior citizens. There's nothing in our part of town that's designed for a senior citizen, and I had raised that concern earlier too. What are we gonna do to provide opportunities for everybody? And this I thought would be a really nice opportunity to do something that would have more of an appeal to older folks. The August-September start process is a little disconcerting to me too. Not that I get you want to get going on this thing, but what the message you're really sending out by doing this is having a public meeting on the 13th, say you're going to take input at that meeting, and then bidding it on the 14th. And that's kind of how this comes across. So we have, I know.
The meeting's on the 13th. We're gonna be looking at plans and specs on the 19th.
Okay. All I'm saying is that it really does cut the time down for meaningful public input into this process, as you could understand. That's all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I understand that your optics are as such. That was timing that staff put together. If staff didn't think that we couldn't be nimble enough to incorporate any feedback, they wouldn't have given that kind of timing.
I can just address
Yeah.
that here, Mr. Evenson. So the fundamental idea would be this, to collect the feedback from yourself or other residents that chose to participate, and then share that with the council at their meeting the fall. And if there was, if there are minor adjustments, they can be made by staff at the time. If they're significant, I would assume that the council might kick it back and say we need to take another look at this from a different vantage point. So I understand maybe the optics, that wasn't the intent. I understand maybe that's how that landed, but we've been successful on projects similar to this size and larger using the same methodology.
And I'm going to trust that you move forward on this. I know how hard it is to get public input on a lot of these things, and that most of the public does come in at the very last minute. Again, I had a discussion with you 2 years ago, and I also threw in my 2 bits on your strategic plan. I got a nice thank you, but that was about it. I never did get a follow-up on any of my thoughts that I shared with anybody at the time, other than thank you, which is okay, I guess. And going back to the concerns again, are the bigger concerns. Yes, there are high costs associated with developing this site if you were to do it such that the safety concerns I raised were issued. As you were talking earlier, I just got a little blip on my thing. 25-year-old girl was killed crossing Flying Cow Drive tonight. You know, Jonathan Parkway is busy. It's a dangerous thing. I don't know if, Eric, I think you were around when the person was killed at the bottom of the hill over by Carver Bluffs, the entrance of the development. People are just driving way too fast down there. Somewhere along the line, those things should be looked at prior to getting too excited about this plan. And I think the plan, you know, I'm not objecting. This is not a not in my backyard kind of a thing. I think this is a bigger issue. I saw what happened with the ball field, or the soccer fields, and how parking there was not adequately addressed until just this year. You know, we had people parking all the way up the street. It was not a good situation. We have to look at things long-term to see what the impacts are going to be. Now is the time if you're developing it now is the time to be looking at this and addressing the concerns. I'm glad, Eric, you brought up the issue of bathrooms and such down there. That was one of the questions I had too, is you're putting porta potties, what is the cost of maintaining these things? What's gonna be the cost of maintaining the dog parks? You're gonna have people picking up, you know, barrels of dog poop on a pretty regular basis, or it's gonna get pretty nasty down there. So looking at these kind of bigger picture, looking at some of what are the off-site impacts associated with this. So we're looking at beyond, yes, it'd be nice to have pickleball courts, it'd be nice to have a dog park, it'd be nice to have things, but what are the other issues? Or how is this going to affect the broader use of, I don't even know where I'm going now, like I say, I'm a little fuzzy, but of the area. Even things such as, have we really thought through dog parks enough? And again, I'm not against dog parks, please understand that. But have we thought through this enough yet to understand how we're going to manage dog parks? What sort of issues are there associated with liabilities with just a general use of these things? You know, I did ask the question earlier too about, and I'm very concerned about providing using our money to provide services for surrounding communities. We do charge for use of our facilities in Carver County. The parks, the gardens that are behind the downtown over here, I believe you have to be a resident of town to use those. I was told that. And I believe there's a charge for them too. So just on that note, we don't have dog parks in the town yet. Now is the opportunity to have the discussion as to whether or not we're going to manage these, or we're going to be building facilities and maintaining facilities for everybody in the county to come down here and use. Or if we're going to say, look, you're welcome to come here, but you know, folks, we want to make sure you're not bringing vicious dogs down here. We want to make sure that you're picking up after yourselves. We want to make sure that our costs as a city are being covered for these things, and our liabilities are being covered. Three Rivers Park does that. Why don't we copy what Three Rivers Park does and require something like a permit? I don't even care if you charge for them so much as I really want to make sure this does not become a destination point. I don't want to be Carver or Chaska West. You know, we're putting our money towards this thing. I'd like to have facilities that are going to be maintained, and that our costs aren't we're not going to have to look at it at additional costs because people from outside of the area are using it. And I don't think that's hard to do.
Go ahead, Brent.
I think those are great comments, Mr. Evans. I do think like the story on whether or not the city charges for the dog park is an open issue. That isn't related to the construction of the park. So if the council wishes to charge for pickleball or the dog parks, they certainly can. I think you bring up kind of a systemic issue in that people from Carver drive on Chaska streets and use Chaska parks, and people from Chaska drive on Carver streets and use Carver parks. And so, you know, the end of that kind of bucket, if you will, is kind of bottomless, because you could kind of go every which way. I would, and it's been many years ago, but I specifically, because it's a very important thing to me, I do remember addressing your comp plan concerns in a very lengthy and detailed email, and I'm gonna try to search and find that. But if there are still questions, and I think the council could attest to that, that's like my number one priority, is to get residents information. So if you're waiting for things, please let me know, whether it's this or anything else. And then the last thing I would mention is, like, and I can send this to you too, but a lot of this work has been done, and so it's our job to provide you that information. But like Aaron Schmidt met with Carver County Highway multiple times about adding turn lanes. We did a corridor study, I think it was in 2013, for that whole intersection of 40 and 11, where 11 goes to Jordan, that contemplated this whole section. So this work is being done, and I would offer that there are many public safety concerns. I got almost hit with my daughter and I crossing at Ironwood and Jonathan Carver Parkway, and there's a fully signalized intersection. So I guess that, like, the question that selfishly I would have, if I can ask it in this forum, is like, what does success look like for you? Like, how can we, like, because ultimately there are concerns that you or Mary or others will have. But if it got down to it and you said, City Council, these are the 3 things I want to see with this park, or is it just, I don't want this park to go in right now? It would, however you could articulate that would be helpful, so we could hopefully meet your needs.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to articulate
are you able to do that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the best I can tonight.
Sure.
I mean, I think the issue of safety is perhaps the highest on any list like this. I don't, again, I'm not opposed to seeing the area develop. I don't know if, honestly, if this is the best use of the site, but if that's what the community says, rock and roll, I'm
Sure.
fine with it. But if that's the direction it's going, it's got to be developed in a way that it's safety is first and foremost in the design of this thing. And if that means spending a little extra money or a lot of extra money to move the access off of Carver Parkway and move it on to West Main Street, I think that's actually good money being spent, because long-term, that is a positive thing for the community, and it's gonna have to be changed at some point in time anyhow. At some point, you're gonna have to decide whether you're gonna use this to maintain the uses on that part with a busy highway going through there, or if it's gonna have to be reconstructed. I mean, I was here when you guys had to when you redid a lot of the stuff on Jonathan Parkway. That was not a cheap thing to do, and it probably should have, if it was anticipated, if the development up there was better anticipated, I think a lot of those things could have been done at the time. I think the issue that I raised with the facilities is not inconsistent with what other communities do. Certainly not what Three Rivers Park District does, and they have some of the biggest and the nicest dog parks in the area.
Agreed.
So, it's nice to be able to use a Chaska County park, but they're passive uses. This is an active use now, so we're changing. I could care less if the kids from Chaska want to come in and play in the pickleball courts. That's fine. I do care that we've had to spend a lot of extra money because of programming and all the other communities that are coming in and using our soccer fields, because I'm not seeing what the return on that to the city is. These people aren't coming there and spending money downtown. They're coming there and they're leaving, and it's not just one car per family. It's mom and dad and the kids and grandpa and grandma and auntie and uncle all coming down there. So it gets pretty hairy down in that community sometimes when the programming is such that you bring in a lot of these other people from outside the area. Again, I don't think what I'm saying here is unreasonable. I think the issue with safety and crime is another issue that needs to be addressed. You brought it up yourself about the issues with vandalism that occur in these areas. Now, we've got homes that back up to that bluff. It's not a hard climb to get up in there. And if the area is not adequately policed, or if there's not a presence there, and a known presence, I mean, I've done park planning. And, I've played the little tricks of getting the sheriff to park an empty vehicle in a park, and it's amazing how well that works. So there are things that can be done to immediately send the message out to anybody who might be thinking there's a problem out there while the park is being developed, to really send the message out that, yes, we're going to keep an eye on this park, and we're not going to let the hooligans start creating problems. This park in particular is going to be somewhat problematic, simply because of the visibility and the distance from the road. It's very easy for the sheriff to pull into Bluffs and take a quick look around there and see if there's trouble happening down in there. This one is going to be much more subject to vandalism. I do have concerns about the lighting. The light at the old sewer plant, it was a little red light up on there. I'd stare on that thing all night long. And it shines right into my bedroom. That was not that high.
Is that still out there?
No.
Oh.
No. That's gone. It's been kind of nice to see that disappear. But I
Eric,
actually
can
get
I ask you to
road
summarize
lights.
your comments?
Pardon?
Can I ask you to kind of wrap up your comments, please?
Sure. So, and I don't have much more because, like I said, I'm getting kind of fuzzy here anyhow.
I can pledge to you
You
to
had
respond.
asked about what I
Yep.
thought should
So I
be
can
done.
pledge to you that I'll work with the city engineer to basically ghost design a future bridge crossing from Main Street, just so that we don't unintentionally box ourselves in from using that as a
Well,
strategy.
I know it's expensive, but again.
Yep, but we can at
think
least plan for
long
it. Two,
term.
I can assure you that we're gonna engage Three Rivers Park District in best practices for managing a dog park, and we'll bring that to
At
the city council. And
Carver Park.
Carver
has,
Parks, sure.
Nawashta is a very popular dog park, so I'm sure Marty would be happy.
And then three, so I'm, kind of one of my functions is working with the sheriff's office on an annual work plan. And so I'll run them through this park, and then we'll incorporate some of your concerns and just kind of in general strategies that we can implement to ensure public safety needs are being met in this area. And it'll be a work in progress. It's more of a journey than a destination, but I'm hearing those three things, and those
There's
are.
four.
What's the fourth one?
Senior facilities at parks.
I would contend that pickleball in a lot of cases is seen as a senior activity.
If you happen to be a single cat lady, that's not a deal.
Oh, hey.
But,
Point taken, but I don't know if there's an action plan that I can do today to meet that need.
yeah, well, all I'm saying is that there are opportunities even in a park like this that are more passive. I'm not a pickleball player.
Sure.
Not every.
Feel free to
not
email
every-
me those, and we can see if we can implement those into our.
Well, I'm gonna leave it up to your park planner to, and there's plenty of stuff out there on.
Like,
senior
if
park.
you have ideas, shuttle them my way.
Thanks for your comments, Eric.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Mary, did you have comments as well?
About this?
Correct.
Trees, more shade.
Nope. If you have comments, if you want to make public comments, you can come up. Otherwise, we're probably close to wrapping. Okay. Aaron, do you have what you need from us on this?
I do, thank you.
Okay. And again, that meeting is next Tuesday night, August 13th, from 4:30 to 6:30, right here in this very room at City Hall. Thank you. All right, Brent and council, would you be mad if the pin that we put in the 10-year buildings and facilities plan, we extended it a little bit longer to our next work session on August?
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
It was Brent's idea.
excellent,
Like all of my good ideas,
yes.
it was Brent's.
Yes.
Okay, then, you're good with that. Let's move on to communications. Eric,
I don't have any communications to add.
Christie.
We have a change in date for the upcoming HPC meeting, and I don't have it pulled up right now, do you?
Yeah, HPC meetings are typically the second Tuesday, but that conflicts with primary, so we're moving it to the Wednesday, the 14th.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
All right, Reed.
Nothing.
Okay, quick updates for me, lightning round. On July 18th, had a League of Minnesota Cities board meeting. It was our first one as a new board for all the folks who were elected or appointed, and I guess elected in June at the League Conference. That same day, there was a really neat Young Women's Leadership Program where the mayors from Victoria, Waconia, Norwood, Young America, Chanhassen, and myself had a panel discussion with a group. It was a intimate, small group of 5 young women, but answered their questions about what it's like being a leader in our communities, what it's like being mayor. So that was a really cool opportunity. It's part of a larger summer program that's run by Congressman Emmer's office. So they have programming throughout his district, and that event was in Chanhassen. That same night, I went to the Planning Commission meeting with Reed, and I just continue to be impressed by how engaged those folks are. I'm sure we're all watching the Planning Commission meetings, but we have one planning commissioner who comes prepared and like has done research and all that kind of good stuff. The topic that night was backyard chickens, among other things that were.
That's right.
But boy, do they know their stuff. On July 19th, we had another Carver County Mayor's Group. That group continues to be strong, and like I've mentioned before, it's one part of ideation. What are you doing in your community? Have you heard about this? And another part support group. On Saturday, the 20th of July, I was honored to participate in, probably gonna butcher this, Guru Paramia, which is Full Moon Day, at the Mandir that is on the way to Waconia off of Highway 10. Really cool celebration with food, but a really neat celebration amongst members of our Indian community. On July 26th, Representative Harder and Grunhagen came to Carver and we walked the levee. Senator Grunhagen reached out because he is hearing whisperings of potentially the governor calling folks back for a special session. So with that, he just wanted to make sure that he and Representative Harder were in a good place and knew what was going on. So it was really more review and overview of information that we've shared before, but they got to get out and walk the levee and really see, the flood is still fresh in Carver, and you can still say, like, see the leaves and why those look different? That's where the water was, and it's still a little bit shocking when you can see it in your mind's eye, and I think it was great for them to see it. That same day, I participated in the picnic lunch that the Lions put on with exchange students who have spent the last month in Minnesota. Kids who are 15 and 16 years old and from all kinds of different parts of the world. And then after that, we ended up downtown, and I kind of walked them through downtown, talked to them about our historic downtown, and told them about the levee project as well. So cool to just know their perspective and to kind of field their questions. One question was like, do you guys get earthquakes in this part of the country? That was a young woman who was from Japan, which is definitely like part of what they're used to. So that was a really cool opportunity to meet those folks. So really great kids. That is it for me. I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Mayor Johnson, second by Councilmember Welsh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening, everybody.